Yep. Okay, good morning. Let's call to order this hearing of the Assessment Appeals Board for April 16th, 2018. Welcome. Looks like we're very popular today. We'll start with a roll call.
Yes. Board Member Crow.
Present.
Board Member Curtis.
Present.
And Board Member Stern.
Here.
All right.
Okay, next I'll ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And after the pledge, if you intend to provide testimony today, please remain standing so we can swear you in. Ready, begin. Okay, great. Thank you. And if you do intend to provide testimony today, please remain standing. And our clerk, Mr. Vlahakis, will swear you in.
All right. So everyone that will be addressing this board needs to be standing, please. All right. I will now place you under oath. When I complete reading your oath, please state I do. You and each of you do solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the matters now pending before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. You may now be seated.
Okay, next what we'll do is go through quickly each agenda item for today to determine the status of each, and then we'll come back to those that will move forward in terms of a hearing today. And we'll start with agenda review. This is a list of items that the board hopefully can take action on all at one time. And we'll ask Mr. Vlahakis when he's ready. Sorry, Mr. Vlahakis. Okay, we're ready for the agenda review items.
Okay. Agenda review for April 16th, 2018. The clerk of the board recommends approval of the agenda review by the Assessment Appeals Board. The agenda review consists of the following agenda items. Items 13 through 16. Application numbers 16 10939, 17 10185, 17 10655, and 17 10656. Applicant Baxalta U.S. Incorporated. Continued to June 4th, 2018, pending receipt of original stipulations. Item number 26. Sorry. Item number 26. Application number 17 10163. Applicant John Romano. Continued to June 4th, 2018, pending receipt of original stipulation. Item number 27, application number 17-10176, applicant Musashi Simi Incorporated, Loretta Yokoyama, continued to June 4th, 2018, pending receipt of original stipulation. Item number 28, application number 17-10228, applicant Jeffrey Melichar, removed from the agenda due to the submission of a withdrawal. Item number 29, application number 17-10418, applicant Elizabeth Fowle, removed from the agenda due to the submission of a withdrawal. Item number 30, application number 17-10584, applicant Buck Kincaid Trust, Bob Fogarty, continued to June 4th, 2018, pending receipt of original stipulation. Item 31, application number 17-10622, applicant David Hunt Sr., removed from the agenda due to submission of a withdrawal. Item number 32, application number 17-10673, applicant Ariana Flynn, denied due to lack of appearance. Item number 33, application number 17-10675, applicant Suzanne Ogsbley, denied due to lack of appearance. Item numbers 34 through 35, application number 17-10995 and 17-10996, applicant HL Skyline Center LLC et al., removed from the agenda due to submission of a withdrawal. Item number 36, application number 17-11015, applicant MKRRP 400 National Way LLC, Tyson Stretzenberg, removed from the agenda due to submission of a withdrawal. Item number 37, application number 17-11039, applicant Kevin M. and Carrie L. Cosgrove, denied due to lack of appearance. Item numbers 39 through 45, application number 17-11119 through 17-11125, applicant LSR Limited Partnership, denied due to lack of appearance. Item number 46, application number 17-11130, applicant Israel Lender, removed from the agenda due to submission of a withdrawal. And that completes the agenda review. Clerk of the board recommends approval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vlahakis. Before the board takes action, is there anyone here representing any of the items just mentioned in the agenda review?
No one has checked in for any of the items, so I don't expect anyone to come forward on that.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any questions, comments from the board?
No.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
I will second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow. And motion carries.
Great. And it appears our in-room display is broken, so we'll just have to go off what the chair announces. So
Uh-oh.
I don't know what's going on with that. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, we'll go next to item 6 on the agenda, public comment. This is a time for anyone to comment on an item not on today's agenda, and now would be the time to do that. Okay, no one's coming forward, and so we'll go to board comments on the items not on the agenda. Okay, so then we'll go through the remaining items on the agenda to determine the status of each, and then we'll come back and hear those that are ready to move forward today. Starting with item 8, application 16-10047. Applicant is Eric Bortolato. Come on forward. Good morning.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. Could you please state your name for the record?
Chris Mendenhall.
Okay, Mr. Mendenhall. Are you prepared to move forward today?
What we've been doing on this, I apologize for my ignorance, is we've been trying to get an agreement with the seller on this property for the last extended period of time. In working with Andrea, she said if we could get a modification of the sales price to help us with the base value, base year value on the property, that would be advantageous to this process. We've been unable to do that. We've been trying to avoid litigation. We're still trying to get that done. I have the documents that we do have that I can give to Andrea today. I understand that this has to be resolved before July of this year. So,
okay, and are you interested in continuing to a future date?
if that's possible, if that's a possibility, that'd be great.
Okay, let's hear from the assessor.
Christopher Horn for the Assessor's Office.
Morning.
We have no objection to a continuance. Do you believe that litigation is necessary?
We prefer not to do that. What happened was it's a representation of the assets of the property, the number of avocado trees. There's a 600 tree count variance. There's other things that weren't properly disclosed that affected the value of the property that would have been instrumental in establishing that base value. Andrea has been absolutely delightful to work with, and she has suggested let's get an amendment to that agreement, which would help facilitate that. So I think we're further along than we have ever been, but I think there's a lack of confidence that it would do anything with the county if we were able to get that or not. So,
Yeah, I can't comment one way or the other until we actually have documentation in hand. With that, you stated you have more documents with you that you would like to provide?
I can give these documents to Andrea today so that she can have those within the time frame that's appropriate for the consideration, and then I will work on that agreement on the modification of the sales price.
Do you believe that you'll be able to do that by the end of June?
Yes, sir. I believe that will happen.
Okay. Then the assessor would have no objection to granting the applicant a continuance to, I believe it's June 25th, is that correct?
That is possibly an option.
What,
So the recommended dates for today's continuance would be June 4th or October 8th. We can do June 25th if this board would like to push the case to Appeals Board number 2. We also require that a waiver be executed by Mr. Mendenhall, as the 2-year period to resolve this case expires July 21st of 2018, and we don't want to take any chances of getting too close to that date, so a waiver would be required to go any further than June.
would June 4th, do you believe June 4th would be sufficient time to?
Yes, I think we get it done.
Then I'll substitute June 25th for June 4th.
And Mr. Mendenhall, are you willing to sign the waiver on behalf of your client?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you can, once this is approved, you can execute this and submit it.
Okay, before we move forward, are there any questions, comments from the board? Okay. And Mr. Vlahakis, I'm sorry, did you have anything else?
I think we're all set. I believe the request is just to continue to June 4th.
If we could get those documents that you have today to Andrea, like you stated, but also have a proviso, let's say 15 days instead of 30, to allow him more time to contact and execute the modified agreement.
That'd be great, thank you.
You're
So-
indicating 15 days before the next hearing or 15 days from today?
Correct. No, 15 days before the next hearing.
Okay, and Mr. Mendenhall, June 4th works for the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to continue to June 4th with the condition that requested information from the applicant be submitted to the assessor no fewer than 15 days before the hearing.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Oh, yeah, sign it, and then if you can hand it to her once it's executed, just pick a date and sign it.
And while we do that, we'll get ready for the next item, which is items 9 and 10, applications 16, 10882, and 10883. Applicant is Skyworks Solutions, Inc.
And I believe, actually, items 11 and 12 are for the same applicant, and we'll have
Okay.
the same situation.
Great.
Yes.
Good morning.
Hi. Good morning. John Offerman from the Assessor's Office. We are requesting a continuance for a couple of reasons. The first is that we recently had a tour along with Mr. Izumi, and we did learn a lot about the property, and the difficulty that we're in is deciding whether or not there has been a significant change of use from the property's original design that warrants a different highest and best use, and we're currently working on that right now. In addition, because of the complexity of this property and its manufacturing process, we want to do everything we can to be careful to avoid a double assessment. The amount of personal property and fixtures for the manufacturing process is multiples of the real property value, and we just want to be real careful with this one. Anything else?
Good morning.
Good morning. Rick Izumi, agent for the taxpayer. And yes, it's we've provided documentation, been working with the assessor hand in hand in regards to that, and we'd agree for the continuance on that.
Okay. In terms of a continuance, are you looking more toward June 4th or October 8th or somewhere in between?
We were hoping for October 8th as our first choice.
Okay. And is that okay with the applicant?
That's okay with the applicant also.
Okay. And any comments from the assessor?
It sounds as if both parties have come to an agreement.
Oh, I guess we already heard from the
Yes,
assessor. I'm sorry.
you have. That's
I didn't mean to slight you, Mr. Offerman.
so. They seem to have the situation in hand. So
Okay.
October 8th works.
Okay.
I'll note for the record that Mr. Izumi has signed a waiver to the 2-year period and submitted it to the clerk this morning, so that is on file.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, so we'll look for a motion to continue to October 8th.
So moved. I will second that motion.
And this will be, just to clarify, items 9 through 12, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you.
We'll go next to item 17, application 16-11058. Applicant is Evelyn Lundeen.
And while this applicant is coming forward, they have signed and submitted a waiver to the 2-year period, and they submitted a letter that I will hand out to you now.
Okay, why don't we just take a minute to look at the handout, and then we'll move forward. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Evelyn Lundeen. I'm the owner with my children of a property at 4240 Meridian in Oxnard on Mandalay Bay, the main harbor. I have a corner property right on the main harbor. Now, I submitted to Brendan, it was emailed in, this waiver to extend the hearing. And along with it, I submitted a letter from my attorney. I am in a legal case. It's the neighbor next door. We are a contiguous property. We're in the townhouses where we're 6 of us connected. And my property is immediately on the main harbor. I'm 5 feet off the main channel. And I have a channel on both sides of me. And this case is very important. This man is, we're televised from my understanding. And this case is very, very important. And according to my lawyer, I cannot disclose the information he has been collecting. I did submit, I had an appraiser that came to the house, Mr. Rick Denham. I gave him 2 reports, a 1999 and a 2007 reports that were done on the property that showed the condition. And we are in the process now of, we have a structural engineer who's working on a current report. And we're trying to get, we have been talking to the appraiser who we will hire and are in the process now to get what Mr. Brendan said is a retroactive or something appraisal. And right now, the property is only a shell. But I can't go into any more detail than that because I could
Okay.
compromise my legal case.
And so are you interested in continuing to a future date?
Absolutely. And the second thing I submitted is my doctor's letter. I had a daughter who just went through massive cancer surgery. I was her primary caretaker. We just sent her hospital bed away 2 weeks ago, and it's been extreme stress, and it has compromised my own health. And that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Let's hear from the assessor.
The assessor has no problem agreeing to a continuance due to a number of issues facing both the applicant and the property. From what I'm hearing is there's more documentation coming in, both the structural report and also and appraisal. And it sounds as if all of this may have to coincide with a legal issue that needs to be resolved. So I'm going to defer to the applicant's judgment on what date to continue this to.
So, Ms. Lundin, is the October 8th date
Well,
far enough in the future?
Right now, our trial is set for October the 3rd, 2018. We don't know how long it'll last. We have files that are voluminous, enormous amount, because they're connected to the city. And also, I think it is a protective thing not to go ahead because of the upcoming election, et cetera, and the delicacies of Mandalay Bay. So our
let me
trial
just-
is October 3rd. We don't know how long it'll last, but it has to be further than that.
Okay. Let's just ask our clerk if there are any.
Normally, we don't
future
like to
dates.
go this far out, but because of the circumstances, I'm thinking our last hearing of the year is December 3rd, 2018. We could continue that and possibly have a proviso that 15 days after the court case is concluded, that the applicant submit what they're allowed to. So tie their submission to the court case being concluded and go it to December 3rd, 2018 is what I'd possibly suggest to deal with this. I don't know if that's acceptable to all parties or not.
Can I ask a question? Would I have the same board?
At this time, this board would be present on December 3rd unless one of them had to had to call out sick, and then we'd have an alternate.
Right, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so sounds like December 3rd is acceptable, and for the assessor, okay?
All right, thank you. Is that it?
Almost, we're getting closer.
The assessor doesn't object to December 3rd. What we want to make sure is that we get the reports, both the structural and the retroactive appraisal, at least 30 days prior to the December 3rd date.
Okay. And we'll also have to gather more information from the city about the seawalls, because that's a primary concern.
Whatever information you
Okay.
want to gather, we'll be happy to review it. All we ask is that we get it 30 days prior to hearing.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, then we'll look for a motion to continue to December 3rd of 18 with the condition that requested information be submitted, I believe, within, is that?
I suggested
what the-
15 days after the litigation is resolved. The assessor requested 30 days before the
Well,
hearing.
It might be easier to say 30 days before the hearing because that's a defined
Correct,
date.
because at this point, we don't know
Okay.
if there are going to be continuances with the court case.
Okay. So looking for a motion to that effect, unless there are any other questions.
Nope. So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crow. And so we've continued to December 3rd.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One more vote on that item?
Nope.
Oh,
My
no,
touch screen
someone-
stopped. Oh,
There we
it
go.
goes.
Thank you.
Okay, next is item 18, application 16-11448. Applicant is Fred Rosenmund.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Morning.
My name is Lindsay Nielsen. I'm an attorney. I'm representing Mr. Rosenman. We're here to request a continuance to the October 8th date. I just recently got into the matter. It's not a substantial amount of money, but it does involve a water well, the drought, certain laws, water laws, and I need to look at that. The Ventura County Farm Bureau is interested in it too, so that would give us sufficient time to try to resolve it with the assessor, and I would request a continuance.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Nielsen. Any comments from the assessor?
The assessor has no objection to the October date, and Ms. Rovtar is the one leading the charge on this. She'll clarify for you the exact issues being debated, and along with having a letter requesting documentation from your client.
Yes, I'll be very happy to work with her, work with your department many times.
Okay, are there any comments from the board? Okay, so we'll look for a motion to continue to October 8th.
So moved. I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crowe. And motion carries. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, item number 19, application 1611575, applicant Kerpel and Sukhbir Dalubal.
This is a request for amendment where the applicant was excused. I think I just realized I forgot to print out copies. Sorry, I am unprepared.
Take your time.
This is a unique situation. The applicant needed to make additional sections to their application, and it's due to issues with interpreting the notice that they were appealing. So we should have caught this when they filed their application, but we didn't, just to a misunderstanding. So the applicant is now requesting to amend the application in section 6 to add the boxes of B1 and B2 to allow them to challenge a change in ownership determination and the value established as a change in ownership determination for the August 31st, 2016 date. So it is requested that your board approve that amendment to section 6 in the application, adding boxes B1 and B2 for August 31st, 2016, and then make the motion to continue to well, actually, let's start with the amendment, because I think there's some additional information on the continuance from the assessor. So at this point, it's just requested that you approve the amendment.
Okay, are there any comments from the assessor?
No comments regarding the amendment.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Not really sure what we're doing here.
Okay, that's good. That's a good point, Mr. Crowe. So we do not have a copy of the application, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I apologize.
Could you just, Mr. Vlahakis, could you clarify for us those boxes, what exactly they are?
Yeah, so what the applicant originally filed on was a construction reassessment, which is only part of the question and a part of the assessment. And upon the assessor and the applicant trying to work this out, it was discovered that there was also a change in ownership that they needed to cover with their application. So right now the appeal covers construction, and we're adding a change in ownership appeal as well. To their first B1, they're going to be checking to say, we don't think this should have changed ownership. We want it that change in ownership assessment reversed. And B2 is saying, in the event it's found that they did change ownership, we disagree with the value. That's what the applicant is saying by adding the selections. And so they're entitled to these amendments. It's just getting board's approval per the rules to add them.
Okay.
Mr. Vlahakis, do you have even one exemplar to let the board pass along to see?
Just adding B1 and B2 to that.
This case till October the 8th.
That's the second part of the question. There's, I believe the assessor wants to ask some questions on that part. So at this time, I'm just requesting approval of the amendment.
Okay, so then we'll look for first a motion to approve the amendment as requested.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crowe. The motion carries. And Mr. Vlahakis, whenever you're ready, I have your original up here.
Thank
and
you.
then we'll go next to a continuance, requested continuance.
Yes, so the reason, this is like I said, the reason this wasn't completed when they filed was a misunderstanding. And so because of that, their appearance was waived, and they agreed to continue this to October 8th, 2018. So the request is to continue to October 8th, but I believe the assessor had wanted to request additional information or something to that effect.
Okay.
Correct. We thought the applicant might be here today. Unfortunately, they're not. So we would like 60, or a site check within 60 days of today, because the new construction, the house is near completion. And also, when the clerk of the board sends notification to the applicant, we would like for him to include this request, which
Yes.
is a 441D letter.
Okay. And are there any, oh, go ahead, Ms. Porsche.
Is there any reason why the assessor doesn't want to independently just send out the 441D letter to the applicant?
We've done that in the past, and we're still waiting on information to come in, and we're hoping that maybe this will entice the applicant to provide the information requested, going out with the clerk of the board's decision, or the board's decision sent by the clerk of the board. It'll have all the provisos, and it'll be one nice, neat package for the applicant.
When did you send it out to the applicant?
The original one went out January of this year.
Okay. Mr. Crow, any comments, questions? Mr. Curtis, anything else? Okay, so then, Ms. Porsche, I assume it's okay without the applicant here to continue with some of those conditions, correct?
The assessor can come in. The assessor can always independently request a site inspection.
Sure.
The board, the assessor is entitled to review the condition of the property, so I don't
Okay.
see an issue with the board approving a site inspection in 60 days at a reasonable time, usually agreed upon by the applicant and the assessor.
Okay, so then we're looking for a motion to continue to October 8th with the conditions that a site visit be conducted 60 days or more before the hearing date. Is that correct, Mr. Horn? Or is it 60 days from today?
60 days from today would be
So
preferable.
within 60 days of today. And I feel like I'm missing one other thing.
4-4.
Oh, and the
441D.
inclusion of the 441D letter
Okay.
with the board's ruling.
Okay. So looking for a motion to that effect unless there are any other comments.
So moved?
Moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow.
Please vote. Thank you.
And motion carries. Next, items 20 through 22, applications 17, 1, 0001, and 03, through 03, so 3 applications. Applicant is GB Kodiak LLC. Good morning.
Jacqueline Smith on behalf of the county council's, or Jacqueline Smith from the county council's office on behalf of the assessor. We're ready to go forward this morning.
Great, good morning.
Good morning, Paul Konopelski appearing on behalf of the applicant, GB Kodiak LLC. I have Mr. Peterson present. We're ready to proceed with the understanding that county council and I have agreed that these are for 3 assessment years, 2013, 14, and 17. There are 2 component parts to each. One is taxable situs, it's a vessel, and the second part is valuation, both of which have been appealed, and we have agreed to proceed on the taxable situs issue. So in the event there's a ruling in favor of the applicant, then we will not need to proceed with the valuation, and if we do, then we will have a valuation hearing at a different date.
Okay, so it sounds like, go ahead.
And we're in agreement with that.
Okay. Let's hear from the assessor.
That was the assessor's council.
That was the assessor.
I'm having a rough morning. Got it. we're in good shape. So what we'll do is come back to you shortly, as soon as we
All right.
get through those.
Thank you.
And for the record, the applicant has paid for findings of fact in this case.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 23, application 17-10004. Applicant is Carmen and Ruel Mizrahi. Morning.
Shall I give my name?
Yes, please.
Ruel, R-U-E-L, last name Mizrahi, M-I-Z-R-A-C-H-I.
Great, welcome back.
Thank you.
Are you prepared to move forward today?
Definitely.
Okay, and let's hear from the assessor.
The assessor is also ready to move forward today. We're estimating 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, and Mr. Mizrahi, any estimate on the time of your initial presentation?
Well, I'm not sure that I need to present anything until I hear the assessor's findings.
Okay.
I do have copies of all the material that I provided the assessor if it's necessary. I'm really not sure whether it will be.
Okay.
For clarification purposes, this is a single-family residence. It's owner-occupied. However, the applicant is contesting the sales price paid, so the burden of proof switches to him. So he will need to present information.
Present first. Okay, well, we'll see what happens.
Okay, shall I go ahead? And I have 6 packets of documents prepared for the members, and perhaps they should be distributed.
Before we do that, what we'll do is go through just a couple more remaining agenda items to determine their status, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
And for the record, the applicant is not requesting findings of fact in this case.
Sir, at this point, no, but hopefully I will have that possibility after the fact.
You must indicate before your hearing begins if you will be requesting them or not.
Okay. That just sounds like a difficult position to put anybody in, not really knowing what the outcome of this hearing is going to be and investing that kind of money, $150 for
Mr. Mizrahi?
that documentation.
You can request findings at the beginning of the hearing. Before the matter is taken under submission by the board, you can revisit your election to select findings. You can withdraw your selection and request findings. The assessor would have the option then if they wish to request findings. But you do have a little valve, a safety valve, but you have to formally make your request, and then if you present the fee, but you can withdraw your request before the matter is taken under submission by the board if you, in the course of a hearing, get cold feet and don't want your findings at that point.
You can cancel it before the end of the hearing.
That leaves me somewhat in the dark again, quite honestly. But I'm hearing that I will have another opportunity.
Before the board formally ends the hearing and takes the matter under submission, you can revisit your initial selection of wanting findings if you choose to do so.
Then at that point, we'll still not have the results of the board's findings.
Correct. You will not know what the board's decision is when you make your final decision.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. We'll go next to item 25, application 17-10069. Applicant is Mosa, and I'll spell the last name Toumeh.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Rami Hanna. I'll be speaking on behalf of my friend here because obviously he has a little issue.
Okay.
He simply would like to request a continuation for this hearing. We've had a luminous discussion with Ms. Melinda there, and during the discussion, a couple issues came up that he would like to go back and collect more data about the location of the utilities, the proximity of their location and the cost, and things of that nature. And if the board doesn't mind and the assessor doesn't mind, he would like to continue the hearing to the next available slot.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments from the assessor?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
The assessor has no no qualms about continuing this to a later date to allow the applicant more time to procure whatever documents he might think are beneficial to him. And all we ask is that we get that information 30 days prior to the next hearing. So all that's left is which date? Do you want a June date or do you want an October date?
I'll have to defer that question to him, but he prefers the June 4th, if you don't mind.
June 4th is fine with the assessor. Just a proviso of receiving the documentation 30 days prior to that. So that will give you approximately 3 weeks to get this information and then get it to us.
Thank you very much for your.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board? But wait one second, please.
Wait.
Mr. Curtis? Okay, so then looking for a motion to continue to June 4th, and with the condition of the assessor receiving requested documents at least 30 days in advance.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crowe. And motion carries. I did. I skipped one. Thank you. So we're continued till June 4th. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I did skip one agenda item, and that was item 24. Application 17-10017. Applicant is Arturo Fernandez.
This item was continued because the assessor had offered the applicant a stipulation and they never sent it in. And they finally just submitted it this morning. I think it was in the red packet for council to review. So if that has made its way to the board, the recommended action would be to approve the stipulation.
You saw that? Okay, any questions, comments from the board?
Motion to approve this stipulation.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Mr. Crowe, seconded by Mr. Curtis, and motion carries.
Thank you.
And that will take us, I believe, to item 38. Is that correct, Mr. Vlahakis?
That's what I currently have, yes.
Okay. Application 17-11041. Applicant is Mark McDonald.
Yes, I have. This was originally scheduled to be denied due to lack of appearance, but the applicant called me this morning. Let me pass out his letter real quick while I.
Thank you.
So this applicant did call me this morning, so I apologize. I hadn't had much time to digest it. But my understanding is that they believe they requested a postponement of this hearing, which I never received. So I asked that he forward me the communications that was supposedly sent to the clerk's office. What we have here is an email he sent on March 16th, 2018, which seems to indicate that he timely submitted a request for postponement. And then another email where I had responded to him. He had sent an email asking why this wasn't postponed. I responded that his postponement only covered a different application of his for an airplane. And he then sent me this email that apparently went to his spam. So technically, for whatever reason, this didn't make it to the clerk, but it appears he does submit it. So not sure what the board should do in this case. I'd almost recommend the board continue to June 4th as the applicant has requested, since it appears they attempted to timely submit a postponement request.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the assessor?
The assessor is going to defer to the board and the clerk on this matter. However, the assessor is wondering why the applicant and/or agent isn't here today doing this.
Okay.
Because apparently he thought it was postponed. It's my understanding that and he lives in Simi Valley. So it's my understanding that he is watching this hearing live stream, and should the board deny his request, he might try to run down here before they adjourn to request it in person. But it's just a unique paperwork lost issue. So his email, the emails he forwarded did show, if these are the dates he actually sent them emailed in, that it was a timely request. But like I said, I didn't get that email for whatever reason.
So this is a fuzzy bunny slipper request?
Is that a technical term?
It is now.
Well, anyway, are there any comments, questions from the board?
I'm inclined to approve the applicant's request.
Okay.
I will second that motion.
Okay, and so, Mr. Curtis, that's continuing to June 4th, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries. And the last agenda hearing item that we'll review, item 46, application 17-11130. Applicant is Israel Linder.
I have that marked down as being on agenda review.
Oh, you did?
I not?
Okay. So
I
then that's
also
already
marked it
resolved.
as
Okay,
withdrawn.
yeah, so then
Okay.
we'd be at, we'd have 47 and 48.
Okay. Okay, we'll go next to item 47, application 17-10484. Applicant is Casa de la Luna, LLC.
This is a unique situation. Your board denied this case for failure to appear on March 5th, 2018. Right about the same time that was denied, the assessor's counter received a stipulation in the mail based on the timestamp. It probably came in exactly at the same time your board denied the case. So due to the timing issues, there obviously wasn't time for the counter staff at the assessor's office to route it through the process and get it to this boardroom. So the recommendation is that the board vacate the denial and approve the stipulation, which was part of your packet this morning, just due to the timing issues.
Okay. And before we move forward, any comments from the assessor?
I believe the clerk of the board.
I guess it's already stipulated, right?
Yes, clarified this, so it's
Okay.
now just a matter of vacating and moving forward with the stipulation.
Mr. Vlahakis, would you rather have one motion with both items? or
Preference of the
two?
board. I'm fine with the board making a motion to vacate the denial due to lack of appearance and approving the stipulation.
Okay, let's do that. If there aren't any other comments, we'll look for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
I will second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow. And motion carries.
Please vote. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to requests for subpoenas, item 48, application 17-10599. Applicant is Grimes Rock, Inc.
Yes, and while appearance is not required, the applicant's representative that's requesting this subpoena is present this morning. The request for subpoena has been handed out to the board along with the supporting letters from Mr. Goldenring and letters from the assessor's representative. And so at this time, the request for subpoena of witnesses at the June 26, 2018 hearing is before your board.
Okay, first, before we determine whether we'll take action right now, let's just get an idea of how long the discussion might take. And if you could start by stating your name for the
Sure.
record, we'll go from there.
Sure. My name's Peter Goldenring, and Prosser. We're counsel for the applicant. And I don't have any more comments other than perhaps 30 seconds or less. I think this is a ministerial event in terms of requesting a subpoena. So we'd asked the subpoenas issued. We offered to place the subpoenaed parties on call, and this follows, frankly, a written request just for an agreement that they would appear. So we do want the subpoenas.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brett Price. I represent the assessor in connection with this matter.
Morning.
If Mr. Goldenring's only comments have been made, I have no additional comments. I leave it to the board's discretion whether you want to issue the subpoena or not.
Okay. And any comments from the assessor?
He's a lawyer.
Counsel, Mr. Price is.
Mr. Price, you're representing the assessor.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Ms.
If the
Borsch,
board
do you have
wishes, I
comments?
could read the rule on
Please.
issuance of subpoenas. The pertinent section is, it's Rule 322, subsection A. At the request of the applicant or the assessor in advance of the hearing or at the time of the hearing, the board or the clerk on authorization from the board may issue subpoenas for the attendance of witnesses at the hearing. The board may issue a subpoena on its own motion. A subpoena may be served on any resident of the state of California or any person or business entity found within the state. All subpoenas should be obtained from the board. That's the pertinent section.
Okay. And before we go to the other board members, just Mr. Price, I want to verify the assessor's office does not have an objection.
No, we don't have an objection, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions?
Both of the individuals have verified they'd be available on that date.
Okay. Any comments, questions from the board?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the need for a subpoena if the assessor and the chief appraiser agree to be at the hearing.
I'm happy to answer that. While you don't have the history of this case yet, what the underlying file reflects is that I sent a letter to counsel for the assessor asking for confirmation that both would be available at the hearing date, and I just asked for a letter response that they would be available, and that would be sufficient for me. That letter was not the subject of any response whatsoever. I then reached out to Mr. Vlahakis, who told me that given your scheduling and the fact that it had to come before the board for issuance of a subpoena, I had only one or two options to have that happen before the hearing date, and so I needed to get it in order for you to hear it. And as of the time of the request for this matter to be calendared subpoena, we still had no communication from Mr. Price or the assessor's office. This is, to be frank, a fairly contested dispute. There are a number of issues that are going on, and to be sort of honest, we probably are filing litigation this week against the assessor's office. So I just want to make sure that certain people are present and available, and as I indicated, I in my letter said, just tell me they'll be there and I'm happy to put them on call, and I didn't get anything. So I do want the subpoenas to ensure their attendance.
Mr. Curtis, in an adversary proceeding, adversaries can rely on, if they wish, on the other party's assurance of appearance, or if they want to be absolutely sure, they can request that subpoenas be issued. So it's an option that either side in an adversary proceeding could have, and the assessor likewise could request a subpoena against any of the attendees from Grimes Rock or some third party if they wanted to.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, so then we'll look for a motion.
So moved for the applicant for the request for the subpoenas.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis and seconded by Mr. Crow, and motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Can I get one more? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vlahakis, I think we have gone through all of the agenda items in terms of possible hearings today. Is that right?
That's correct. We have two hearings, items 20 through 22 and item 23. I'm inclined to recommend we hear the homeowner's case first, as those are typically shorter, and starting with item 23 and then going to items 20 through 22, but I leave it at the preference of your board.
Okay. I agree unless there are any objections, and so what we'll do is go next to item 23, Mr. Mizrachi, and while everyone prepares, we'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll go ahead. Okay. Yes. Okay, we're back in session, and we're hearing item 23, application 17-10004. Applicants are Carmen and Ruel Mizrachi. And Mr. Mizrachi, come on up. like to start by hearing just a brief overview of the application from the assessor, and then we'll determine how to move forward.
Thank you. This is a prospective base year value appeal. The applicant, in the documentation that he's presented to the assessor, requests that the base year value, along with roll years 2014, 2015, and 2016 be adjusted. The application that was filed can only address the prospective base year value as of 1/1/2017. This is not a retroactive appeal. The applicant has also indicated in the correspondence that he's provided that the 2017 value is not being contested. Therefore, the AAB's ruling regarding the full market value as of the transfer date will be factored forward without further review being required. This is a single-family residence. It is owner-occupied. In normal situations, the assessor would have the burden of proof, but as the applicant is contesting the price that he paid, that we accepted, the burden shifts to the applicant.
Understood. Okay, so the way we'll proceed, first, Mr. Mizrachi, we'll hear from you, your information that you'd like to present. Then there'll be a time for the assessor and the board to ask questions, and then we'll hear the assessor's presentation. We'll end with closing summaries, beginning with the assessor and then closing with you. So did you have information you'd like to pass out to the board?
It's contained actually, sir, in the packets that are
okay, so we'll
now
call
being
this
distributed.
Thank you. This will be Applicant's Exhibit 1. And we'll wait just a second for everyone to get the information, and then you can go ahead. Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Well, I'd like to address first the most tangible aspect of one of the components of our purchase price, which was our share, by virtue of our agreement with the former owner, our share of the replacement of the sewer line that runs under the property. We knew from renting in another location within the same complex that these sewer lines containing cast iron had corroded and were in need of repair or replacement. So we ran a video underneath the new property, the one that we now are residents of, and found that indeed there were problems. So we negotiated with the former owner on the repair of that, and we agreed to go in half of the $20,000. So that's included in our purchase price. I think that was a mistake on our part, that we should have paid that individual, the former owner, outside of the escrow, so that it would not have been added to the cost of our purchase price. Other aspects of it are that this unit does not contain anything that is unusual for the units that are in our complex of Hueneme Bay, the senior community. These units were built in the late 60s. Most of them, I'm not saying all of them, but most of them have been upgraded in terms of window replacements, door replacements, external types of doors, that is. In our particular unit, as I indicated in the letter that I wrote to Rick Denham, who was in the appraiser working for the assessor's office that was responsible to receive this information, I indicated that the circumstances included the very significant circumstances of my wife's illness at the time, and her hospitalization. She was released at that point in time, but just bedridden and very down emotionally. And I knew that this was a unit that she would appreciate, that she would want. She always indicated she wanted a fireplace. And as I indicated in my letter to Mr. Denham, the unit is really well located within the complex. as being almost adjacent across the street from the community center. Just a good location. The assets within the unit, I started to say, as I mentioned in my letter, were a bricked-in patio and Dutch doors leading to that patio and new carpeting, all of which wouldn't necessarily have added up to the additional costs that we paid. It was the totality of it that drew my interest and, in turn, my wife's interest in purchasing the property. We had just sold a house in Venice that we had been renting out for years, and so we had the funds to be able to pay a little bit more for the features that this one had. To repeat, the location, a few upgrades, the fireplace, which I made a point of mentioning in my letter to Mr. Denham, that originally did not add anything to the value of the unit. They were all the same price, with containing the same square footage, that is. So it was, again, a totality of the way that the unit presented itself and my wife's condition and the going-in halves on the sewer line, and all of that added up to somewhat additional thousands of dollars that we paid. And I wasn't watching closely. I didn't even think about that the more we pay, the higher our property taxes are going to be in the future. That was not a primary concern. Had it been, I'm not sure it would have made a difference other than withdrawing from the purchase of that particular property. So we went ahead. We don't regret the decision, and now we just want what we see as a kind of a revisiting of what we paid and why we paid it and how that should impact on the taxes that we now pay. So that's my summary, and what the court clerk has passed out contains all of the items that I'm referring to. And I would note that the prevailing property value for 2014, as indicated in a letter from a realtor that we've come to know that was willing to put herself out there in the sense of writing that letter, indicates that the property was worth, in effect, $295,000 on the market. Comparable sales for that year indicated that. And even in subsequent years, 2015, 16, still the prices did not rise to the amount of our purchase price on the property. Okay, so that's pretty much what I've written and the documentation that I have to justify a reduction for that base year of 2014.
Okay, thank you. Let's go first to any questions from the assessor to the applicant.
Yes, Mr. Mizrachi, what specific quality, you mentioned some of the attributes of the resident. Were there any specific qualities with the residents that were required?
Are you asking about my wife's condition as to whether...
Just in general, if you want
that were required by us?
Yes.
As residents?
That you were looking for specifically?
No, there was nothing about this property that, to answer your question, that would have been of greater use in owning the property or residing in the property. Nothing in that regard.
With regards to the comparables you provided for 2014, 146 East Bay Boulevard, did you visit this property?
No, we haven't. I haven't visited any of during that period of time. I've since then visited open houses, but at that point in time, no, in terms of looking around a little bit further. In terms of what was on the market in that particular complex at that. I can't say for sure, because I may very well have visited some properties that were on the market at that time, in fact, most likely, but I can't really say specifically that I went to that property that was on the market that was sold during that period.
I guess the reason why I'm asking, what made this property so much more advantageous than possibly some of the other ones that you saw?
What I saw on this property was the fact that it was an N unit. All of the units have common walls. They're attached to each other. This one had nothing, no property to the one side of it, just a walkway. And that allowed much more light to come in. In lieu of common walls, we had exposure actually to the great outdoors, if you will. So we had a lot more natural light. We had some beautiful trees that were growing, not on our property, but within the common property that we could see overhead in the patio. Things that came to mind, or come to mind as you're asking that, is that the property really presented itself well. Not that it costs any more originally. There were no aspects to it or assets that made it more valuable to begin with, other than, again, the location, which didn't differentiate in terms of the purchase price originally. It just had a lot of appeal to us. The things that were improved were the bricked patio and, like I said, Dutch doors leading to 2 sets of doors leading to that. When they were installed, I don't even know. I wasn't in that conversation with the party that we bought it from in terms of whether he did that to enhance the property for the sake of selling it, or whether it had been done years before that, because so much of this stuff had been done over the years, from the late 60s when they were built until ongoing. You go into some of these properties and it looks like they haven't been touched from the day they were built, and others that have really been improved and upgraded nicely. Ours, I think, was somewhere in the middle of that. But again, location, N unit, fireplace, and general location were the issues to me, and in turn to my wife when she saw it.
Okay. Thank you for the great detail on that. Did you get an appraisal done on the property?
We bought the property outright, so we did not initially need an appraisal and did not seek one.
Okay.
So, no, there was no immediate need upon purchase to have an appraisal.
So this was more of a cash sale?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Did you get an inspection report done?
Inspection by whom?
An inspection by a certified inspector, home inspector that comes out and takes it from door to door? Okay.
I trusted my sense of what was good and what wasn't about the property. So, no, I didn't have anybody look into the condition of the furnace or anything like that.
The concessions that were made involved the sewer, and from the documentation you provided us, it was estimated to be $20,000 for repair, and you and the seller decided to, in essence, split the baby on this. He just took the $10,000. He took $10,000 and just added it to the negotiated price to come up with the final selling price. Is that correct?
Yeah, I should talk for a moment about the process, because the seller's first impulse when I said, look, you got a bad sewer line, it's on you. You own the property. You're not going to be able to sell it that way. You need now to let people know of its condition. And his response was, I'm taking the property off the market. I'm not going to sell it if I'm going to have to put $20,000 into it. And, well, that was his decision, but I went back to my wife, and it was like, oh, my gosh, she really wanted this property. So I went back to him, and I said, look, we'll give you half of the cost of a replacement of the sewer line. And that caused him to be willing to reach an agreement. Whether that answers your question directly or not.
It does.
Okay.
It showed that negotiation went on that you offered X, and upon discovery of the sewer line, you said, listen, you need to take care of this. And this is my interpretation. You told the seller they needed to take care of it, and then further negotiation happened where you split the value, and you took $10,000 of the burden, and he took $10,000. Since then, has the sewer been repaired?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was repaired before we ever moved in. I should add, interestingly, that the method used, however, was called the trenchless method, which is now, subsequent to that time, is no longer an appropriate or a legal way to replace a sewer line. The concern is apparently that in an earthquake, that system will not hold up quite as well as the conventional kind of system where you're actually going in, the contractor's going in and digging a trench, tearing up the foundation, going down, and literally replacing the cast iron in this case. Ours was you pull a metal ball through the system, you break open the cast iron, and you lay in the replacement, and then you run chemicals, catalysts that actually harden the seals at the attachments of the section of pipe. So that was the method that was used. Whether it was a fair price or not, he contracted, we paid 50% of the cost.
You're of the opinion that you paid too much.
That we paid too much on the property? I wouldn't put it in those terms. I would say that we paid an amount that was not consistent with comparable property values at the time. If I had it to do again, I might still pay that extra money to get what we got. Once again, the end unit, the fireplace, the general location, and some of the upgrades. So I never looked at it as oh my goodness, I paid too much. I knew at the time that it was more than other properties of comparable size. It's 1,245 square feet.
And you just deferred to this one because it had better attributes, it had everything that you wanted, and like you said, in your opinion, you didn't pay too much at the time, and if you did it all over again, you may still do it based on what was available.
With the same frame of mind, yes.
With the same frame of mind,
yes.
With the other comparables that were out there.
Yes.
I believe the assessor is done with questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board to the applicant?
Did you use the realtor to?
No, this was on the market to be sold by owner. There was no realtor involved.
And again, you said you paid all cash?
Yes.
All right. And you bought it for how much?
In the 340s.
345?
That sounds about right. I think I put it on the application. I put 343.
We had it listed or come in that it was $344,760.
There was a homeowner's exemption, I see, of $1,000. I can't even remember what the.
You agreed on 335, and then you kicked it up 10,000 because of the sewer. Okay. Was there any reason you didn't use a realtor?
Because the seller had put it on the market themselves. I saw no reason to.
You just drove by it and you saw it?
I'm sorry.
You just drove by it and you saw it?
Actually, I was coming. We were renting in this complex in the Hueneme Bay. I was coming back from the swimming pool on an occasion, and the owner had put an open house sign. So I took a walk over there, and it appeared to be everything that I was thinking again in terms of my wife's disposition.
Sure.
So, and it looked to me like it was the right piece of property for us, based on that.
Did you think about getting an appraisal on it or contacting a realtor to value it at that time, like the realtor that you had this?
No, I did. If I had it to do again, perhaps so, in terms of getting additional leverage to get the owner to lower. The owner, incidentally, is he and his wife have been buying units throughout this complex, so it didn't stop with the one that we bought from him. In fact, he has another unit on the market right next door to ours that he upgraded. He invariably asks a little more than prevailing values around sales, and part of that is that he really improves the property. I don't know what he did with our property in terms. We may have been in that discussion. I'm not sure what he did versus what was in that property when he bought it. But he's in that business of flipping, of fixing properties in our community.
So when you bought it, it was fixed up?
It was ready to go. He had, as I indicated in my letter to Mr. Denham, it had been painted recently. It had new carpet. So all the cosmetics were there as to how the unit presented itself.
And you said you sold the property in Venice to buy this one?
We didn't sell it to buy this one.
You sold it and you had the money and you bought it?
Yes.
So you had
we knew that we were going to buy a property.
So this wasn't your first sale? This wasn't your first purchase of a home, correct?
That is correct. We actually lived in the property at one time in Venice that we eventually rented out when we moved up here to Ventura County, and then sold it.
Okay. All right. Nothing else, thanks.
Mr. Crowe, any questions?
No other questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions right now. Go ahead, Ms. Porsche.
The last document in your packet is that July 21st, 2017 letter from the Berkshire Hathaway Realtor. And it says, please see attached area comps. Are those the comps that are included in your packet?
They must be. I don't recall receiving any other sets of comps for that matter. So she must have used these. And then in looking more closely at 2014, at the comps from 2014, that only covers about half the year in 2014. So the actual average of the comps for that entire year came to more than what is indicated on that sheet that shows 2014, if I'm making myself clear there.
It looks like there's actually a couple of the pages. One has 2014 comps exclusively, and one has some from 2014 and some from 2015 on your packet.
Yeah. Now, on that, though, I think the ones that in 2014 that were used were underlined, if I'm not mistaken, to assure that that it wasn't a mistake, that taken mistakenly, that all of those properties were sold in 2014, which they weren't. I'm looking for my copy of that. I see half a page here. The average 272, again, was only because the first half of 2014 was used. And in fact, we bought our property in August of 2018. So additional properties obviously were sold during that time after this particular printout. So that's not a terribly accurate one. I think the most accurate is what she shows, the realtor shows in the letter, an average of $295,000, which no doubt included subsequent sales that weren't contained in this earlier 2014 run. I don't know if that answers your question or not. It's all that I can say about it, though.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Porsche, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let's go next to the assessor's presentation. Okay, Mr. Denham, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Rick Denham, Ventura County Assessor's Office. If we could all start together, there's about the third page in, there's a listing of the subject property from the Gold Coast Multiple Listing Service, which is our local multiple. This is why we indicated to the board this is a Rule 2 sale. Here's a copy of the listing. There's a copy of the sales price. There's the date that the listing sold. The date that the listing sold is about halfway down on the left. It'll say sold date, 8/21/14. And that's the date that we are debating. There's obviously a lot of information in the listing, but that's the listing. Now I'm going to kind of have you go backwards to the what's called page 2, which is the page right in front of the listing. I would note, and I'm just going to read this, last sort of middle paragraph, last paragraph before the conclusion. Per the applicant's preliminary change of ownership report, the property was in good condition with excellent recent upgrades. Narrative from the applicant indicates this was a preferred property. It was an end unit with a fireplace. Correspondence from the seller, also supplied by the applicant, indicates negotiations transpired explaining the final sales price being higher than the listing price. Of note is the seller's comment the applicant was highly motivated to make the sale work. There was neither an appraisal nor an inspection report provided to the applicant. We put this may have, but apparently it was an all-cash sale. So it was an all-cash sale of a very nice property, clearly above average, that sold by the applicant through the multiple listing. Now I'm going to go back to my appraisal and then subsequent pages. These are all interior third-party pictures of the subject taken at the time of listing, at the time of sale. It's sort of page after page of the condition and what it looked like. We see granite, the usual suspects of upgrade. The last page has a picture of the patio and the garage. You'll note that even I don't know about other folks, but this garage obviously had the floor painted, looks like sealed, that kind of thing, to show the kind of quality that he paid for. We now have the comparables. That looks like this, sir. If you, here's a comparable sheet. We took 3 comparables, of course, during 2014. They are all from the subject complex. Of which I believe the applicant said he lived in. You'll note that one of the comps' raw sale price is $369, actually higher, the raw sale price. And so there's quite a spread in there, depending on quality, that sort of thing. And they support the price of $344,760. We then have a map showing where our comps are, which of course are all in the subject complex. We did note that the subject is an end unit. We still have a hard time, as I've stated, I believe in prior cases, of adjusting for end units. So even though our unit in this case had an advantageous and we did not adjust upward, although on a personal basis and common sense tell us they might sell better, we still haven't been able to document it in the market. So that's why we didn't make the adjustment. There's a copy of the escrow of, I believe that included his, I'm not quite sure because the final sale price, I'm sorry, is rounded in red at $344,760. So that was indeed the situation. More indication on the following sheet that they had all the things that they wanted in a unit. That they further that They knew, they knew what they were buying. Obviously, they've already stated they would buy it again if they have the chance. Because of all this information, part of a Rule 2 sale is, I'm sorry to remind the board, but we have to more than strongly consider a Rule 2 sale price, because that is how we treat 99.9% of all taxpayers. So we did have that consideration. In this case, buyers seemed to be fully informed, had opportunities to buy other properties, and the data supported it. So that's why we are currently recommending that you sustain the sale price, which I believe the exact price is $344,740, but $760, which is their final negotiated price after various things, and that's why we're recommending that. That's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mizrachi, this is a time for you to ask any questions based on the information that was just presented by the assessor. And you will have some time at the end for a summary, so this again is just time to ask questions.
Just for clarification, you mentioned that the property was listed on multiple. Did I understand you correctly?
Yes, sir.
That comes as news. I don't know that the seller had it listed at all other than putting out his signs, but I don't think he put it on multiple listings.
That's a copy of the multiple listing there, that sheet. I obtained that from the multiple listing service.
Okay, which is that copy again?
It looks like this. It's about the third page in.
Right there, your thumb's on it.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
That's a copy of the multiple sheet obtained from the multiple listing service. That's the only place I could get that.
Okay. Not that it's just a technical question, and I think you clarified it. Not that it enters into the price we paid or the real value of the property. No, I have no further questions. I might want to summarize my position afterward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board to the assessor?
Under condition
Ms.
error.
Porch, I'll make sure to get to you.
Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Under condition on comp 2 and 3, what is that SLT adjustment?
Slightly superior.
Site superior. So you're saying that his property is $18,000 superior as far as the location of the site and everything?
What we did was Mr. Denman and I talked about this, and I believe it's a 5% adjustment to the sales price. Comparables 2 and 3 with regards to their attributes and upgrades appear to be slightly superior to the subjects.
Just to mispronounce English, good and gooder.
To the assessor, so when do you start using MLS information in your appraisals?
We've used MLS information for quite some time. A number of the Rule 2 sales or Rule 2 appeals that have been presented to the board have had that sheet within them. They may not have come under as much scrutiny as they have today, but with Rule 2 sales, it's a key document that we present to the board.
Okay. So it says the selling agent is, they've noted a selling agent here? Is that correct? They have a listing agent and a selling agent.
I'm not 100% familiar with how the MLS does that.
Ryan is the listing agent. Did you, Mr. Mizrachi, did you talk to Ryan? Ryan was the seller, or you don't know who Orion Call is? I'm just curious.
No, the seller was a Richard McDonald. He's the author of that letter indicating that the cost of the sewer line replacement and what we as the buyer paid. He signed that at the bottom.
All right, so again, you didn't have an agent when you bought this, correct?
We did not have an agent, nor did the seller have an agent.
Okay, but was there a for sale sign when you saw the property?
Yes.
Was it a realtor for sale sign or for sale by owner?
By owner. Yeah, that's a little confusing why it ends up to be in the MLS, but I guess every property may very well end up with an MLS listing, and on that form it's used.
All right. No further.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Defer to you.
Okay, I'll just be quick. I have one question for the assessor and one for the applicant. Mr. Denham, it does list a listing agent as Ryan Call and also a selling agent, which is a non-member of the MLS and shows the DRE license number of the selling agent. Are you sure that this listing is the right one? Or that this information is the subject property? Because
Yes, and perhaps to help you a little further, another confirmation, if you would look on the left-hand side to the sold date, it's located, I'll hopefully visually show it to you, it's about right there. That also corresponds. We do this with every Rule 2 sale. This is, to be honest with you, routine. Either it's there or it's not. And
Understood.
That's
Just
one of
doesn't-
the indicators that makes it Rule 2 is it's there.
It's just confusing that it shows that the buyer was represented by the agent when the applicant says that
I don't
he
want to
wasn't.
comment on the accuracy of the MLS and putting material down.
Okay. But it is the subject property.
Correct.
Sir, innocent question. Have you run into this before, where properties that are listed by the seller and bought by without any agents involved, are those two presented in this way, as if they're through a real estate broker or agent?
Well, to answer your question, no, I have not seen. I have not been involved in a hearing where the applicant says that there was no agent involved and we were presented information showing multiple agents involved. So it's a first.
It's
so
a little
we'll reconcile that.
misleading. I don't know how relevant it is to
Sure.
anything else. If agents are involved, of course, there's going to be more costs involving commission, et cetera. But other than that, I don't know that.
Also, the assessor looks at it a little bit differently. To the assessor, so per the MLS, it was on the market 3 months. Is that what you're?
No, it said 35 days. That's in the top left-hand corner.
It says the listing date is 5/19, and then the pending date is.
Oh, yeah, it looks like it was 3
8/23.
months. That's
Shows
true,
about 3
too.
months.
Yeah, that's true, too. You're correct. Yeah, there's lots of varying, our point is the MLS.
Sure.
What happens from there, our whole point is that it's fair and square, that not just our taxpayer had an opportunity to buy it, but many people had an opportunity. They didn't buy it, but he did, and that's the price. He paid fair and square in the marketplace. That's why we supported his price. Other people had an opportunity to buy it, they didn't. He did, and that's what makes an open market sale. And one of the many things that make an open market sale, and this meets the criteria.
Thank you.
Okay, I had one more question, then Ms. Porsche, I promise we'll get to you. Mr. Mizrachi, it might be a dumb question, but the full listing price was in the $435 range, and then I assume you were.
You mean 335?
Sorry, 335.
Yes, okay.
And when you found the issue with the deficient sewer line, I would assume that the presumption would be that the full price would include an operational sewer line. So I'm kind of interested in how the negotiation worked, where it cost $20,000, you paid $10,000 on top of the price rather than reducing the price by $10,000, which would have been half of the repair. Is there something that I missed there? Seems like you paid more in exchange for participating in repairing the sewer line that was
It was
deficient.
virtually a separate transaction under the circumstance of the seller indicating clearly that he was going to take the property off the market. He was not prepared to pay $20,000 that we discovered in running that
Okay.
video.
So you offered
online.
another 50% in order to make the deal?
Yes, it was important enough to, we thought it was off
Got
for
it.
a minute, my wife and I, and then I said, you know what, I know you want this, we're gonna offer, half of the cost.
Okay.
And that's what it took.
And then the sewer was done before the close of escrow?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Great, thank you. Ms. Porsche?
My question, Mr. Denham, is if there were, according to MLS, a couple agents involved, why wouldn't the buyer's final settlement statement show any percentage paid to agents if there really were agents?
Once again, I don't know what the arrangement the seller had. Clearly, it was on the MLS. How they were paid or not paid, you can put something on the MLS and work for free. So a commission being paid isn't mandatory. Commissions are 100% negotiable. So I have no idea how the remuneration or lack thereof was paid or not paid.
Who would have put it on into the MLS, though? Who would have chosen to do that? That's kind of a mystery at this point.
It's not a mystery. It's in the MLS. It's there.
But who offered that information? It must have been the seller.
Correct.
The seller had to give permission.
Is that a legal requirement to
Yeah,
list?
the seller would have given permission for someone to put it in the MLS. That's
Okay,
exactly
but I'm
right.
asking whether that is a necessary part of a deal like this.
No,
It isn't.
you can do a for sale by owner and not have anybody involved.
Or not listed.
Yeah, and
Okay.
not listed.
I'm going to just step in for a second. I think we have as much information as we're going to get on the issue. I just want to make sure, do we have any other questions from the board to either assessor or applicant? Okay. So let's go then to closing summaries. We'll start with the assessor and then we'll end with the applicant.
Thank you, board members, council, Mr. Mizrachi. The applicant lived in the complex prior to the purchase. The applicant had the opportunity to view not only this property, but others. He stated that he doesn't believe he paid too much for what he got. And that he might purchase it again based on the comparables that were available at the time. It's obvious that the attributes of the property, whether it was the upgrades, the fireplace, it being an end unit, the trees, everything associated with the property was that and motivation, as stated by the seller, were the key components. And most of all, the sales price falls within the adjusted assessor value range. And with that, that's the reason why the assessor is asking to sustain the sales price along with all of the other factoring that has subsequently taken place. We've talked about the sewer, and again, this goes back to the motivation. They had a sales price, work was discovered that needed to be done, and rather than lose the property, the applicant ponied up another $10,000 to make the deal work, and subsequently we arrived at $344,760. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Mizrachi, do you have any closing Comments?
I think the comments that were just made reflected accurately the process and the commitment. I would just say again that the assets, the upgrades, don't necessarily add thousands upon thousands of dollars in material value. It had a value to us when we bought it, but some of the appeal was intangible. It couldn't be reduced to dollar amounts, such as the end unit aspect and the general location of the property, and even the fireplace, which those units, again, when they were built, there was no differentiation in cost between units that had fireplaces and those that didn't. Those that didn't afforded an extra bedroom. That's what that location would have been had the fireplace not been there. Then we would have had another bedroom. Instead of a 2-bedroom unit, we'd have a 3-bedroom unit, but we wanted the fireplace, so we opted for that. So it had some sort of irreplaceable advantages, which I just outlined. The actual cost of upgrades within the property, maybe there was $10,000 in upgrades, so maybe that is an additional amount that we would pay. But on the other hand, most of the units in the Hueneme Bay community have been upgraded to different degrees. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. I've been in enough units now to see upgrades that are comparable to the upgrades that we encountered in our unit. But there were unique qualities that you can't necessarily put a dollar value on, that we were willing to pay more, and I guess that does put a dollar value on them when somebody is willing to take on the advantages of a particular aspect and willing to pay more for that. But in fact, the upgrades would not have amounted to the value for which we paid on the property. It was a total kind of valuing of the property that we experienced. So that's what I would say. And I don't hear a lot of disagreement about that. And I agree, with the findings of the assessor, other than the fact that I think it should be, the value should be something below what we paid for it at the time. And yeah, I mean, one gets torn between, okay, we really want this thing, and it's a one of a kind in the sense that how long are we going to have to wait until we find another unit of this type? And by then, property values will have gone up and we'd be paying even more for it. And we wanted to make that move. We had been renting in that community for 7 years, and until the sale of our Venice property, and it was time to move, particularly because of my wife's condition. So that's what we elected to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Villahakis told me that the applicant did request findings and promised to pay for them, but before everything is taken under submission, the hearing is closed, if the chair could check in with the applicant to see if the applicant still wishes to proceed.
Okay, so having heard that, Mr. Mizrachi, would you still like findings of fact?
Well, quite honestly, the findings would be used to take it further.
Correct.
The appeal to court, I understand. And it's not that I don't want to invest the money, but I'm just not sure where all that goes. I have trust in this group right now to do the right thing. And I'll be swearing at you under my breath if you don't. So, just kidding.
Okay, so I'll take that to mean that you are not requiring findings of fact, right?
Okay.
Okay, great. So we will close the hearing to public testimony.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The assessor is requesting findings of fact.
Oh, okay. So we will not yet close the hearing to public testimony. We'll verify, okay, findings of facts are requested.
So now you'll get them regardless because the assessor has paid for them. So
okay, and so we will then still close it to public testimony. We'll be deliberating later today in closed session once we finish our other proceedings, and then Mr. Mizraki, you can check in with the clerk in terms of getting a decision, or a minute order will be sent out within the next few days. So you'll
A minute order reflecting the board's
reflecting the decision.
Okay. that
And
sounds
then,
good.
but the findings of fact would not be prepared for another 45 days or so. That's the deadline. So that's where we are now. And will we need a separate motion, Mr. Vlahakis, for the preparation of the findings?
Nope, nothing's necessary. Your
Okay.
board's action to take under submission is sufficient.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Okay.
You can call me later this week and I can give you what they have to say.
Okay, and we can anticipate some paperwork reflecting that.
Their decision will also be noted to you in writing.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go next to items 20 through 22, applications 17-10001 through 03, applicant GB Kodiak LLC. And we'll just take a recess for a couple of minutes, say 5 minutes while everyone gets ready, and then we'll get. Okay, we're back in session at 11:35. Hearing items 20 through 22. GB Kodiak LLC is the applicant. And looks like this is for a boat. And why don't we start by just getting a brief overview, if we could, from the assessor of the nature of the application, and then we'll proceed from there.
Of the board, Jacqueline Smith, Assistant County Counsel on behalf of the assessor. In this case, the sole issue before your board this morning is whether situs existed for lien dates January 1, 2013, 2014, and 2017 for the Ventura County assessor to impose a tax on the Peterson's yacht, which is called the GB Kodiak. This boat has come before your board previously, and your board has rendered a decision on other lien dates. But at issue this morning are those dates that I mentioned previously, 2013, 2014, and 2017. And whether there was situs for those lien dates such that the assessor appropriately taxed the boat at that time or for those times. The assessor has the burden for the January 1, 2013 and 2014 dates, and the taxpayer has the burden for the January 1, 2017 lien date because the assessor timely assessed for that date. But
Okay.
we're happy to present on all three dates first.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. And is the assessor's position in terms of burden of proof and how you present, I guess that's what you just indicated, you'd be fine with going ahead with all three together?
That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry. Just to clarify, the only thing would be on the 2017, the party with the burden of proof has the legal right to open the hearing. So as long as the applicant
Understood.
is fine deferring that on 2017, then it's fine that the assessor goes first on all three and last.
And
on all
we're
three.
happy to defer if the taxpayer wishes.
Okay, thank you. So on that note, let's go to the applicant. Just on the question of the 17 date and the presentation of the information with the assessor accepting burden of proof for 13 and 14, but not 17.
I would think the interest of not getting confused on the issues that we leave it with the assessor proceeding. What we have done is we have taken the position that there is no taxable situs for the 3 tax years. We have provided binders for you which are marked, the first being tab 1, which is a summary with some legal discussion of prior administrative action. Exhibit number 2 is actually the minute order and findings from the 2016 hearing on 2011. 2015 and 2016, which we think are, should be a part of the record because the panel went to great lengths to examine the issues, and I believe Vice Chair Curtis was a member of that panel for that hearing. And then what we've done is broken out tabs 2013, 14, and 15 with the coverage, the summary, ship's logs, and what have you. And what we'll try to do is streamline it by introducing the information, but letting Mr. Peterson testifying to the content.
Okay, thank you. And was it Mr. Komlowski?
Konopelski.
Konopelski, sorry.
Yes. Good Irish name.
It's close. Okay, so then we'll start with the assessor's presentation on all 3 years and go from there. And thank you for your patience with our previous hearings and process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The assessor.
I had one quick question, real quick. So you had mentioned being timely assessed. Are you saying that the 2013 and 14 were not timely assessed? I just want to be clear.
I believe so. I believe that they were retroactively.
They were issued as escape assessments.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Go ahead.
The assessor has also prepared an exhibit or binder for your board in consideration of the pending issues. This includes a summary sheet describing, and I'm not sure if they've been passed out.
Yep.
All right. A summary of the legal authorities on the CITES issue that the assessor believes is relevant, and supporting documents that coincide with the assessor's opinion, as well as several advisory opinions that we would like for the board to consider in making its determination. And those advisory opinions are included in Exhibits G, H, and I. It is the assessor's position that under the Revenue and Tax Code, there is clear authority for this board to conclude that the GB Kodiak did have CITES in Ventura County, and that it was appropriate to assess the boat for lien dates January 1, 2013, 2014, and 2017. I have included the citation and text of the relevant code sections in our summary, which can be found in Exhibit A on page 3. Those two code sections, and I'll focus specifically on them this morning, are Revenue and Tax Code Section 1140 and 1138. And these two sections provide the authority for determining whether a vessel is assessable in a particular jurisdiction under California law. Revenue and Tax Code Section 1140 states that vessels regularly engaged in transporting passengers, as this boat is, or cargo between two or more ports and vessels, concerning which notice of habitual place of mooring has not been given, and this is the dispositive section, shall be assessed only in the county where documented. Now, if you'll turn to Exhibit B of the assessor's materials, in 2000, this yacht is registered with the U.S. Coast Guard. And in 2013 through at least February 2014, the U.S. Coast Guard documentation for this yacht reflected the Oxnard address of its owners, and that is the Monaco Drive, Oxnard, California address that you'll see on Exhibit B. At some time in 2014, the owners of the boat changed the address of their Coast Guard documentation such that it was no longer documented in California. But what's clear is that in 2013 and for the first 2 months of 2014, it was registered at the Oxnard address in California. And so under Revenue and Tax Code Section 1140, this is precisely the type of boat that's addressed by that section. No other habitual place of mooring notification was provided or filed at any time by the boat owner. And the code section makes clear that the vessel shall be assessed only in the county where it is documented. And so it is the assessor's position that for lien dates 2013 and 2014, this boat was clearly documented in Ventura County and shall be assessed here. Even if this board were to find that this documentation is not dispositive of the issue for those two lien dates, and also for the 2017 lien date, because at that time the boat was registered out of state. Revenue and Tax Code Section 1138 provides the answer. And that code section states that for vessels documented outside of the state of California and plying in whole or in part in its waters, the owners of which reside in this state shall be assessed in this state. And it is the assessor's position that there is strong evidence before your board that the owners of this boat reside in this state, and more specifically here in Ventura County. The evidence in support of their domicile is included in our packet materials, but to outline for your board the evidence that we have showing that the Petersons reside not only in California but here in Ventura. They've owned their home on Monaco Drive in Oxnard since 2003. They are both, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson are registered to vote in California, in Ventura, and have been since 2003. They pay their taxes here in Ventura County. And most compellingly, I think, they claim a homeowner's exemption here in Ventura County for their Monaco address residence. Exhibit D in our materials is their claim for homeowner's property tax exemption. And there is on page 3 of that claim I'm sorry. On page 3 of Exhibit D, you'll see towards the middle of that page, under Part 4, Section B, the claimant is asked, is this property intended as your principal place of residence? And the applicant in this case, Mr. Peterson, selected yes. And he filed this claim with the Ventura assessor under penalty of perjury. And it is the claimant's responsibility, which is on page 4 of the claim document, that the homeowner has the burden to notify the assessor if at any time their primary residence changes, such that they no longer qualify for the exemption. And the Petersons have never done that. And I think that this document is the most compelling evidence that their principal place of residence is here in Ventura County. There's an advisory opinion that we've included in the materials, and that is Exhibit H. This is an opinion from the California Board of Equalization that sets forth the factors that are looked to determine residence under California law. And that includes things like being registered to vote in California, having a vehicle registered in California, paying income taxes in California, and the Petersons most certainly are registered to vote and pay their taxes here. But they've also...
Ms. Smith, sorry to interrupt you. Were you in Exhibit H?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Exhibit H, page 1.
Page 1, okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, by taxes, you mean federal income taxes or state income taxes, or which kind of taxes?
On page 2 of the opinion, it clarifies that it is the filing of income tax returns in the state.
Okay.
So I believe it's state income taxes. But what Exhibit D shows is that the Petersons have claimed by signing under penalty of perjury that their Monaco Drive address is their principal place of residence. And that's in addition to all of the other evidence that they are in fact domiciled here. They also return to Ventura County from time to time. They intend to reside here exclusively in 2018. And as their travel logs show, they come back to Ventura County every single year. And so with all of that, not only are many of the factors in the advisory opinion met, but there's evidence on top of that to prove that they are in fact domiciled here in Ventura County, and that Ventura County is their primary place of residence. The meaning of that is important because under Revenue and Tax Code section 1138, even for vessels that are documented outside of this state, if you reside in this state, then your vessel is assessed in this state so long as it's plying in the waters of California, which this boat does and which the travel logs reflect. And so even if this board is to disregard the documentation of the boat in Ventura County for lien dates 2013 and 2014, for all 3 lien dates at issue, under Revenue and Tax Code section 1138, this boat can clearly be assessed in California, and it is the assessor's position that it can be assessed in Ventura County because that is where the applicants reside. And the applicants have never provided any evidence of a tax bill in any other jurisdiction. So it's not like this boat has been taxed in some other county in California, or in another state or country for that matter. But under Revenue and Tax Code 1138, the dispositive document would be a tax bill from some other county showing, yes, we reside in California, our boat plies the waters of California, but we've paid taxes in some other jurisdiction. Also included in the assessor's summary is a citation to property tax annotation 860.0043, which elaborates upon section 1138. And that tax annotation, as well as the assessor's handbook, elaborate upon this rule and essentially give the taxpayer the right to establish that if they can show their vessel is habitually moored at some other location such that it then acquires situs there, then situs would transfer. But no such evidence has been presented in this case. The applicant has not articulated where the boat has situs, if not here in Ventura County. And even if they had, the travel logs show that this boat spends temporary periods of time all along the western coast. And so there's no one place where this boat has been habitually moored for some protracted period of time such that the applicant could say, well, yes, it's spent a year here in this port, so Ventura County no longer has jurisdiction. We have a tax bill from this other jurisdiction, and situs has transferred. But it's the owner of the vessel's burden to bring forth that information. and those other tax bills showing that some other jurisdiction has acquired situs, and nothing to that effect has been provided in this case. And so it is the assessor's position that under Revenue and Tax Code Section 1138, because the Petersons reside in the state of California and specifically in Ventura County, and because their boat plies in these waters, that the boat shall is the language in the code, shall be assessed by the state of California. And here, the only jurisdiction that has assessed this boat is Ventura County, and that makes sense because the owners reside here. And barring some other tax bill from some other jurisdiction or county of the state in this state, the Petersons would be flouting the California tax code by owning a home here, claiming the homeowner's exemption, and getting the benefit of that exemption, claiming that their primary residence is California, and specifically Ventura, and having a boat here and plying in the waters of the state and not paying any tax on their vessel. And so it is for all of those reasons that we request this board find that for the lien dates at issue, the assessments were appropriate, and not just appropriate, but required under California law. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go first to questions from the applicant to the assessor based on the presentation.
Were you presented with, prior to the hearing, the logbooks, repair orders, and other documents related to 2013, 2014, and 2017?
Yes, I've seen those.
All right, and are you disregarding all the information that's contained in those documents?
No, I think they're relevant, but I don't think they I don't think they demonstrate that Citus has transferred to some other jurisdiction.
All right, so that's your personal opinion?
No, that's my legal opinion.
All right, now, prior to the hearing, you were also provided with the findings and the minute order from the October 2016 hearing regarding 2011, 2015, and 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct. And just to be clear for the record, I was provided with these documents by the assessor, not by the applicant. In fact, we made repeated requests of the applicant for travel logs that were at issue for these lien dates, and they were not provided in timely fashion, and we required a continuance to get that information. So the documents you're referring to were not provided to me by you. They were provided to me by my client, but I have reviewed them.
Did I not provide you with a copy of the findings of fact and the minutes in an email and ask you to review that?
I originally received that from my client, and in our discussions, you referred me to that document, and I let you know that I had reviewed it already.
All right, but I provided it to you as well.
You have also provided me with a copy of the opinion of this board, yes.
All right, and isn't it correct that the appeal periods are for 2013, 2014, and 2017?
For this hearing, yes.
And you indicated you cannot proceed with this hearing unless you got logbooks from 2015 and 2016.
That's correct.
And you were provided with those logbooks?
After a continuance and multiple requests, yes.
And is it not correct that the findings in that hearing for the years 2015 and 2016 indicated that there was no taxable situs in Ventura for the tax years 2015 and 2016?
That was this board's finding, correct?
All right. So other than the fact that someone owns a home, there are other factors to be considered to determine whether a vessel has a taxable situs in Ventura other than just a residence.
No, I think that the tax code makes clear that if the owner of a vessel resides in the state of California and their boat plies in the waters of the state of California, that the boat shall be assessed by the state of California.
So are you suggesting that the board erred in their ruling on 2015 and 2016 based on the facts that were presented?
No, I don't know the particular facts of that case and how they differ here, but I don't know that the same authorities were considered, and we are hoping to bring them to light for this board in their consideration of the issue. It's a de novo hearing, and we've provided what we think are the dispositive authorities and for this board to consider in making their conclusion.
Now, is it not correct that the owner of the vessel is GB Kodiak, an Oregon limited liability company, and not the Petersons?
I don't know.
Well, you provided Coast Guard documentation, and it indicates that the name of the vessel is Kodiak, the hailing port is Coos Bay, Oregon, and the owner is GB Kodiak LLC.
My understanding, I don't know who provided this information to the U.S. Coast Guard and whether it is legally accurate. I don't know the legal owner of the boat. And I also don't know that it matters.
In your legal opinion?
That's correct.
Okay. Excuse me for one moment. All right, I have nothing further.
Okay, we'll go next to questions of the assessor from the board.
In 2015 and 2016, was the boat assessed up in Oregon?
I don't believe so. I don't know, Your Honor. I'm not sure, but I do not think evidence was presented that showed that. And perhaps Ms. Hill can answer that question.
I can add to that just a little bit. To our knowledge, it was not assessed in Oregon. We actually did some research to see if it was assessed in Washington, as it has spent some time up there, and it was not assessed in Washington either.
And to your question, the owner of the vessel has the burden to bring forth the evidence showing that Citus is somewhere other than Ventura County, such as a tax bill.
I believe at the beginning of the hearing, Ms. Hill said that the assessor accepts the burden of proof for 2013 and 14, but not for 2017. So I believe the burden then is on the assessor to demonstrate local situs for the local jurisdiction for the first 2 years, and then the burden is on the applicant for the last year.
That's correct, but within that analysis, I believe that there is still, the assessor has the burden to prove situs, but then if the owner is to rebut the assessor's position, they have the burden to provide that evidence showing, no, you got it wrong, despite all of your evidence establishing situs here, which I think we've proven. It's in fact, Citus in fact has transferred to some other jurisdiction, and here's the tax bill showing that. And my understanding in talking to Ms. Hill, and we worked very closely together on this case, is that no tax bill from any other jurisdiction has ever been presented by the applicants for any of the tax years that this board has considered.
Well, I'm curious why I wasn't part of the original hearing. Why was the assessment waived for those 2 years, 2015 and 16?
I believe the board found that Citus was not established in Ventura County because the boat did not have sufficient contacts with Ventura County. And I don't know that legal analysis is complete.
Mr. Crow, I have a copy of the former decision. I believe the applicant said they'd put it in as well, so either way.
Yeah, it's tab 2.
Mr. Crow, any other questions? Mr. Curtis?
I guess the question is, does the applicant need to show any tax from any state in the United States? Does a boat need to be taxed? Period. Or can it just?
Well, it's if in fact Citus has transferred to another jurisdiction, in light of all of the evidence weighing in favor of Citus being found in the state of California, then it would be the vessel owner's responsibility to bring forth that documentation and that the states to identify where alternate Citus is and to prove to this board that under the laws of that state, that asset would not be taxable. But that's not their case, and they've never presented that legal authority or that documentation to outweigh the strong, compelling evidence that they're domiciled here, that their boat returns here, that in the years at issue here, I mean, we can get into the specific tax logs. For example, in 2012, their yacht was in Ventura County longer than any other place it ever went that year. That's on top of all of the other evidence showing that they're domiciled here and that they ply in the waters of California.
Okay. Your turn.
Okay, I just have a few questions. First, on the application, the name of the applicant is GB Kodiak LLC, and then, as discussed in Exhibit B, the Coast Guard vessel documentation, the owner is shown as GB Kodiak LLC. I guess I'm curious first to understand what's the connection to the Petersons?
Ms. Hill has informed me that the Petersons are the sole owners of the LLC, but I'll let her answer to her knowledge.
I think that summed it up pretty succinctly. We were provided documentation regarding the LLC, and it is the assessor's understanding that the Petersons are the sole members of that LLC.
Okay, so it is a single-member LLC, as far as you can tell that from the state filings, right? Okay, thank you. So, does the assessor have evidence or proof or information that the vessel was in the county during those years?
We do.
Okay.
For example, Exhibit F contains all of the travel logs from 2012 through 2017.
One thing I need to object to is we're not dealing with 2012. So I'm not sure what the relevance of the logs for 2012 are.
Well,
Okay,
one of the
thank you.
lead-
We'll be able, let me just step in. We'll listen to the information presented, and we'll be able to make a decision on what's relevant or not. Thank you. But go ahead.
Because the lien dates at issue in this case are January 1, 2013, 2014, and 2017, we looked most closely at calendar year 2012, 2013, and 2016, because those would be the dates preceding the snapshot January 1 lien
Okay.
date. So, for instance, in 2012, this is Exhibit F on page 3. You can see an entry for March 4th, 2012. And the entry from that date states that the boat departed San Diego at 5 and arrived at CIH, which is the abbreviation used for Channel Islands Harbor. And the boat remained in the Channel Islands Harbor, if you turn to page 4, until May 8th, 2012. And so it was there for more than 2 months. And in reviewing the other locations and stints of the boat in that year, that's a longer period of time than it spent in any other place. And there is evidence in all 3 years at issue here that the boat spent significant time in Ventura County. It doesn't spend much time anywhere.
Okay. And is there a threshold of time that would trigger property tax, say in Ventura County versus somewhere else?
No, and that's because really what matters is once domicile is established, both the handbook and the tax code make clear that the vessel shall be assessed in the jurisdiction where the owners of the boat are domiciled, unless they can prove that Citus has transferred to some other jurisdiction. And so one way that they may do that is to say, look, it was sitting in this other jurisdiction for 6 months, and that's much longer than how long it's spent anywhere else, and we have a tax bill from Oregon or San Diego or wherever it may be. But there's no indication in the logs that that this boat is in some other jurisdiction for such a long period of time that it would outweigh the substantial evidence tying it to Ventura County. And it's the boat owner's burden to identify what that jurisdiction would be and to provide evidence proving that.
Okay, thank you. Last question. So if I think you already stated this, but if a tax bill from another jurisdiction were presented, then
we would honor that.
Then Ventura County wouldn't have an issue with that, correct?
Correct.
And like you said, you have not received any information?
Correct.
Are there other jurisdictions that don't tax personal property like a vessel?
Not that I am aware, but I did not research the vessel taxation laws of other jurisdictions outside the state of California.
Okay. So let's just say that the vessel is in another jurisdiction, that it is or isn't taxed by that jurisdiction, and the applicant elects not to give that to the assessor. Is that enough information? Is the absence of a tax bill from another jurisdiction enough to trigger tax in this jurisdiction?
If the boat were in fact habitually moored in a jurisdiction outside of Ventura County and the laws of that jurisdiction were such that a vessel were not taxed, then yes.
Okay.
But in this case, there's no evidence of habitual mooring in some other jurisdiction. And on top of that, no evidence that they in fact paid taxes in that jurisdiction or that taxes were not required in that jurisdiction.
Okay. I came up with another question, even though I said the last one was my last question. Give me 1 second, please. Okay. So I assume based on your testimony that there's support in the California law, somewhere, Revenue Taxation Code or somewhere else, that a single member LLC, wholly owned, can be considered, that the ownership within that LLC can be considered as a replacement in terms of being the taxpayer. I hope I'm articulating that well enough. If I'm a single member, if I own 100% of an LLC, same situation, even though the LLC is registered somewhere else, et cetera, if I live in Ventura County, I could be considered as the owner of the boat, even though it's technically owned by an LLC, in terms of taxation.
I'll see if I can answer that question. So we're actually talking about the assessee. We've made the assessee GB Kodiak LLC. In fact, the assessor can assess property to the person that owns, possesses, or controls the property. So we had the option to assess it directly to the Petersons. We chose to assess it to GB Kodiak because that is how they had it registered with the Coast Guard, just for clarity.
What is the
Got it.
code section that you're referring to? if you remember?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can take a peek and see if I can get back to you on that.
Okay, now I don't have any more questions for right now. Any other questions from the board?
What is a critical date for being in California? The lien date, the standard?
For purposes of residence, I would say the preceding calendar year leading up to that lien date would be relevant information, as well as the evidence on that actual date.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, we'll go next to the applicant's presentation.
Thank you.
Why don't we, is there an estimate of time that you have for before we pass all of this out, Mr. Vlahakis?
Probably half an hour.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead.
Thank you.
Unless there are any objections. I usually lean to the side of proceeding, but happy to take a break if anyone wants to. Okay. And would anyone like to take a recess for a few minutes before we go forward? Okay. Let's do it.
I'll try and be entertaining. Could you state your name for the record?
Ron Peterson.
All right, and Mr. Peterson, what is your relationship to the LLC GB Kodiak?
We're a managing partner, my wife and I. We established the LLC when we decided to buy the boat in 2008. We moved to Ventura County in 2003, not knowing we would be buying a boat like this. When we did that, I was concerned the way we were going to use it were from the wilds of Alaska to the remoteness of Mexico, and we were going to have people with us, friends. And I was concerned about protecting the assets of the family trust assets from a liability issue. So that's why we established the LLC in Oregon. Using Oregon, we weren't sure where we were going to keep the boat at the time. Oregon has no property tax on boats. So my logic was that if we end up leaving the boat there, that would be a tax-effective way to do it. And so that's how we established the LLC and how we manage it.
All right, now in tab 1 exhibit, first exhibit, there is an invoice from Stan Miller Yachts dated 7/22/08. Is this the purchase invoice that GB Kodiak was given when it purchased?
Where we at?
Sorry, where are you in your?
In tab 1,
Tab
it's
1, okay.
actually the first page following the 6-page summary.
It has a circled 14 on top of it in the upper right corner.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, and so GB Kodiak is the entity that purchased the vessel?
Yes.
All right, now, can you turn the page, please? Is this your certificate of documentation for the vessel?
Yes, this is current.
All right, and that's for what period of time?
That's from mid-September 17, expires in 18 of this year, October 31.
All right, and it shows GB Kodiak as the managing owner?
Correct.
And at what address?
In the Salem, Oregon address.
All right, if you turn to the next page, there's another certificate of documentation. For what period of time is that document?
That's the prior year from mid-September 16 to expiration date October 31, 17.
All right, by way of explanation, the U.S. Coast Guard requires documented vessels to recertify, if you will, every year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So your certificate of documentation is good for a year, and then it goes on, and you have to renew it.
Correct.
All right, now can you turn the page to the next certificate of documentation?
So, could you verify what tab we're looking at right
We're still on tab 1.
Okay,
I'm just
got it.
following as casually as I can.
And which certificate of documentation?
If you look in the lower left-hand corner, it says issue date September 2015, expires October.
Got it.
20. All right, and does this also reflect that GB Kodiak in Salem, Oregon is the managing owner of the vessel?
Yes.
Moving on to the next document, that appears to be issued September 27, 2014 through October 31st of 2015. Is that a certificate of documentation on the vessel showing the manager being GB Kodiak in Salem, Oregon?
Yes, it is.
All right. Now, if you look at the document that was presented by the assessor under tab B, it's showing Coast Guard documentation. It says documentation issue date September 18th of 2013, and it has your Oxnard address. Is this actually a certificate of documentation, or is it a screenshot on the website?
It is not a certificate of documentation. I don't know where this comes from.
All right, I have to apologize, but I have a document that was actually used in the last hearing, and I would have to make copies of it. But I'm going to, if with your permission, is ask a question regarding it, and then perhaps we can, on the break, make some copies and circulate them.
You're welcome to ask whatever questions you'd like. You don't have to circulate it at all.
All right, I need to get that back then to ask the question.
The same document is in the assessor's presentation, tab B.
Okay. Does that? Why don't you, if you could just take a second and compare it to the assessor's tab B, then we maybe could solve that issue.
That's not correct.
All right, actually, I have a screenshot that has the Oxnard address, and if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, it says 2/5/2014. That's in tab B. Well, actually, it's not on the copy that's attached. I have a copy from the last hearing that has an imprint on the bottom that says 3/13/2014, and it has the Monaco or the Salem address, and then I have a screenshot from February 5th of 2014 that shows the Monaco address. So I have two different Coast Guard screenshots, first with the Monaco address of 2/5/14, and then a subsequent screenshot 2 weeks later showing the same Salem, Oregon address.
Okay, let's stop for 1 second. Sounds like information that it's up to you. If you'd like to submit it, you can, and it would be good to have copies.
It would be helpful.
Okay.
I'm not sure what, how expedient we can be with that process, or if there are any suggestions.
All right, now, Mr. Peterson, we've just talked about two Coast Guard screenshots, one from 2/5/14, which appears to reflect the exhibit in B provided by the assessor, and then a different screenshot 2 weeks later on 3/13/2014 with the Salem, Oregon address. Can you explain the discrepancy?
When asked this question, the only thing that I could figure out is in either 13 or 14, en route from Alaska to Mexico, our departure point that year was out of the Oxnard address. And as you notice, each of these documentations expire October 31st of each year. So to go into Mexico, to go through clearance, you have got to have up-to-date documents. It was getting close. Normally they would send it to the LLC in Oregon, and it would take me several weeks to get it. Since we were tight on time, I called the Coast Guard and I said, for this one time, could you change the mailing address of that documentation to the Oxnard address, which they did. And so apparently that screenshot or that query at that time showed that request to have the document mailed. That's the only explanation I can have. The documentation from 2008 to 2018 have always been the Oregon address. So from where that came, that's the best explanation that I could come up with.
All right, so what you're indicating is that you may have requested that the document be mailed to Oxnard, but you were not changing the address of the underlying company itself.
That's correct.
All right, I'm going to take us back to tab 1, following the certificate of documentation. Do you have copies of any of the certificates of documentation prior to this 2014?
I do not. I was asked for these, and up until this tax issue became an issue, I really didn't keep documentation other than some expenses and so forth on the boat. So I would keep a year or two in the rears, and that was about it. So as I went back through all my files, everything that I have is what we showed you in that tab.
All right. Now, the next document in Exhibit 1 has a 9 circled up at the top, and that appears to be the Articles of Organization for GB Kodiak LLC, filed with the Oregon Secretary of State June 18th of 2008. Does that reflect the address of the LLC to be the Windemar address in Salem, Oregon?
Yes, it does.
All right. Now, just so we don't get confused, if we look at item number 5 and item number 6, there's a reference to an address on Napier Street in San Diego. Is that the address of Chris Winther, who's the attorney that formed the LLC?
Yes.
All right. And does that have any bearing on the formation of the company or where you had it registered?
No.
All right. If we turn to the next page, here is what's stated as an amended annual report, May 27, 2017. And this is showing GB Kodiak. You've got a mailing address in Kennewick, Washington, and a primary business address in Windemar in Salem, Oregon. Is this something that was filed with the Secretary of State of Oregon for the last reporting period?
Yes.
All right, and that reflects the principal place of business in Salem, Oregon.
All right.
All right, now turning on to the next page, there's a document here, most of which is in Spanish. Can you explain what this document is?
When the boat was purchased in 2008, it was our intention, and we requested of the State Franchise Tax Board to give us a sales tax exemption because the boat was to be used outside of California, which we were granted. And in that process, we obtained a 10-year import permit to bring the boat to Mexico, which we did upon taking ownership in August of 2008. This temporary import permit is a 10-year permit, which you pay for, and it has a renewable 10 years, so it's coming up for renewal this October.
All right, and this allowed you as a U.S. citizen, not a Mexican citizen, to bring the boat into Mexico for a 10-year period.
That's correct.
And are you, as a U.S. citizen, allowed to register a boat in Mexico?
You are not.
All right. So this would be your means of doing so?
Yeah, the country of Mexico encourages American boats, and they do so via this import permit.
All right, so the document we're looking at in Spanish is the actual import permit for the vessel, and the letter following it is the letter that was given to Mr. Winther indicating that the state board was exempting the vessel as not being purchased for use in California. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, we're going to skip tab number 2 and go to tab number 3, please. All right, is this a copy of your assessment appeal application for 2013?
Yes, yes.
All right, now if you go across 2 pages, there's a document there that says GB Kodiak LLC 2013 log summary. And then we have, if we go to our master tab, in here we have the 2013 ship's log, your mooring charges, repairs that were made to the vessel, and fuel receipts for 2013.
Where are you again?
Well, I'm combining, I apologize.
Tab number.
Sometimes when you know what you're doing and other people don't, it doesn't go well.
You're in Exhibit 3?
Yeah, I'm
Tab
looking
number 3.
at Exhibit 3, which is the log summary, which is giving a summary of the ship's log for 2013.
Page 3, tab 3.
Two more pages. There you go.
Now, although this is a summary that I put together, can you briefly explain where the vessel resided in 2013?
Well, the dates, I would have to verify each, and I've gone through and done this before, and as far as I know, all of these are correct. The boat was in Washington beginning in October. When we come back from Alaska, we left it in Washington for that year to have some work done on it, quite a bit of work, as a matter of fact. And then that work was done between October and March, as I remember, and then we started back north. Again, we had a significant accident in Foggy Bay, Alaska. We had about almost a $40,000 damage to the boat. We were in the boat yard in Wrangell, Alaska for nearly a month.
In 3 sentences or less, what happened?
Well, hit a rock, pretty plain and simple. Was a bad condition. We were with another boat, and just my wife and I on ours and another couple on theirs, and we were coming out of an inlet that had about 25-foot swells, 40 knots of wind or so, and I got set down much more than I ever thought. Pilot error, no doubt. But anyway, we limped in to Ketchikan, Alaska, did a underwater survey with video, found the damage, and limped up to Wrangell, Alaska, which was the only place around that could haul us, and the repairs were made there.
All right, now after you completed the repairs, that was in about June of 2013?
Yeah, we come back, I guess we got into Channel Islands around the 1st of September, and we left and headed to Mexico five weeks later, I guess, of 13, that was, 2013.
All right, now your stop in Channel Islands, was that for reprovisioning or any other purpose?
Well, when you come back from a long trip like that, unfortunately, there are several things wrong with the boat, and so your repair, updating, and provisioning is always a part of it. So typically, we would spend a month or so when we come through each way. We would typically spend a month or so in doing those repairs, provisioning, and getting ready for the next leg of the journey.
All right, and it was not with an intent to change the situs to Ventura?
No, of course not.
All right, and so you left Ventura in October and headed Back to Mexico?
Headed to Mexico, yeah.
All right, now, there was a suggestion by the assessor referring to a tax code that if a vessel is used or in transport of passengers and cargo, do you charge anyone for passage as a passenger ship?
No.
All right, and do you in any way act to haul cargo on board?
No.
All right, thank you. All right, now, if we look further in tab 3, you have included the ship's log for the year. And I'm sorry I can't give you an exact page, but there are a series of pages to support the location of the vessel that you just testified to in terms of moorage. Is that correct?
Sure. One comment, as we're addressing the log, the assessor's office stated that they had not received information as to location of the boat. In August of 2015, I provided a complete logbook with all the receipts, everything that I had available to me from August of 2008 until August of 2015, which the assessor's office has. I think, is that Mr. Metcalf in the back? It was all provided to him and the assessor, Araceli Bayakowshev. So to say that you didn't have that information is just not correct.
All right, in order to save some time here, our summary on page 1 indicates that tab 3 contains the ship's log, the moorage charges, the repair receipts, and fuel receipts. So is that an accurate depiction that's consistent with the 2013 summary we've just gone through?
Yes.
So how much time, based on the logs, was the boat actually in Ventura?
Let's see, where are we on? What period?
We're
of time?
on tab 3.
For the year 13, I guess the boat was in California and Ventura County for 6 weeks.
All right, if you're excluding the coast, can you pinpoint how much time was spent in Channel Island?
I think this time was that's the 6 weeks in Channel Islands.
Okay. All right, now let's move on to tab number 4, please. Are those first 2 pages copies of your 2014 assessment appeal?
Yes.
All right, and then if you go to the 3rd page, we have a 2014 log summary. Can you look at that, please, and indicate where the vessel was in the year 2014?
Yeah, the vessel was in California from first week of April through mid-November.
Okay, and where was it prior to California?
It was in Mexico.
All right. Now, out of the time that it was in California, was it in Channel Islands only, or were you cruising?
Well, we did a trip, I believe it was 14, we did a trip to San Francisco for a month. And we had significant repairs done in 2014, I think all of which have receded here. But we had stabilizer problems, we had bottom problems, we had water maker problem, we had a turbo problem on one of the engines. So probably 3 or 4 months of that time in California in calendar 14 were for repair.
Was this the year of the Americas?
Yeah.
All right. So,
No, America's Cup was the year before.
Year before, okay. All right, and after you had those repairs done, did you head back to Mexico?
We did.
All right, and I believe according to the summary, you were there through July of 2015.
I think we were there longer than that, weren't we?
Well,
in Ensenada, okay, so.
Well, this crossed over into the period of time in the last
other
appeal.
year. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. No, that's correct. Yeah.
All right, and again, within this tab, you've included not only the ship's log, but in support of the ship's log, mortgage agreements, repair documents, and transit documents.
That's correct.
So let's move on to tab number 5. Is this the assessment period for 2017?
Yes.
This was your appeal. All right, and if you go on to page 3, there's a 2017 log, and can you indicate to the board where the vessel was located in the year 2017?
Yeah, the boat left California in April of 16 and did not return until mid-October of 17. And it went from Channel Islands to Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska. It spent from the 1st of 17 through April of 17 in Kennewick, Washington. Then we departed the 8th, I guess, of April, returned to Ketchikan through, that should be Ketchikan and not Kennewick.
My error.
That should be Alaska.
Sorry.
And then we spent the summer in Alaska, and we departed there. It says we departed Oregon the 9th. That's probably about right. And we arrived Channel Islands mid-October of last year.
All right. Now, from October through the end of the year, did the boat spend all of its time in Channel Islands?
No, it did not. The boat's 10 years old, and all the electronics were originals, so we did an electronics upgrade, really a simple replacement of what was not working anymore. We did that down in Long Beach. So the boat spent about a month or so, 3 weeks to a month, I don't remember exactly, in Long Beach, this last of November, first part of December.
All right, and that would be in the receipts that are attached in
Yes.
tab 5 as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, in terms of actual time that you spent in Channel Islands in 2013, could you tell us how many days you were actually in Channel Islands with or without the boat?
I'm not sure if I have actual dates. I think we calculated that as a percentage. I think in 17, I had once calculated that we spent 13% of our time at the Channel Islands address. We essentially live on the boat, so we spend very, very little time there. That was the issue in the last hearing, I think, as well. And same thing applies now, 2 years later, as it did back then.
So you spend a majority of your time on the boat, wherever the boat is?
That's correct.
And a majority of the time, the boat was not in California?
Vast majority.
Nor was it in Channel Islands. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you asking this board to make a finding that based on the information that's presented, that one of the factors that should be considered is the manner in which the boat is used for purposes of the assessment.
Yes.
And that it's your position that there is no permanent situs for the boat in the state or in Channel Islands, despite the fact that you own a house in Channel Islands.
That's correct. Maybe it would be worth explaining on the why do we have a house in Channel Islands. I retired from Fluor Corporation in Irvine, Aliso Viejo, in 2003. And they do not have a retirement program. I retired as a senior executive, and what they do have is a deferred compensation program. So for the last 10 years or so of my employment, I chose to defer most of my income. Upon retirement, which I did in 2003, you have to make an irrevocable decision that says how you want to withdraw that. There is some risk to that deferred account because it's a non-qualified program. So you become a creditor of the corporation, so I had a lot of consternation about how do I want to draw that money out. But once you make the decision, as I said, it's irrevocable, and you can draw it out as a lump sum, or you can draw it out up to over 20 years, which is what I chose to do. I began withdrawal in July of 2003. That will be completed in 2023. And the state of California takes the position that says if you earn the money in California, you need to pay income tax in California. Several of my colleagues chose to litigate that. Some won, some lost, but in every single case that I'm aware of, it took 4 or 5 years to litigate, and it cost up to $100,000 of legal fees. So I guess I decided that said, okay, I'll go along with the fact that since I earned it here, I'll pay taxes on it here. So if a domicile is represented by where you intend to stay, I can pretty much assure you that it's not the Oxnard address come 2023. So that's why I'm paying taxes here, and that's why we have an address here.
All right. Now, to recap, the vessel itself is documented in Oregon.
Correct.
And when you are in Oregon itself, there is no property tax whereby you would be assessed.
That's correct. There's no sales tax or property on vessels in the state of Oregon.
All right. And when you are in Mexico, other than the temporary permit and whatever fees there are in terms of, transport to another harbor or the dockage, Mexico charges no fees related to vessels. Is that correct?
They do not tax non-citizens.
All right. And if you are in the state of Washington, if you are in transit versus in residence in Washington, isn't it true that there's no tax there either?
That is correct.
And when you travel to British Columbia or Alaska, there are no taxes associated with being in transit in those jurisdictions.
Yeah, British Columbia is the same as Mexico. They do not tax non-citizens. The state of Alaska does not tax transient boats neither, mainly because of the big fishing fleets and so forth up there.
All right. Now, in terms of where the vessel is habitually moored, does the ship's logs that have been presented give a good indication of where the vessel is habitually moored, be it Mexico, Washington, Oregon, Alaska?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And in terms of your use of the vessel, do you consider the vessel a home?
Yes, because that's where we spend the vast majority of our time.
All right. And your use of the boat is not to park it at the dock in Ventura and go on a harbor cruise once a month. It's to actively use the vessel and cruise the Pacific waters.
Yes, when we made, this was a significant investment for us. And so my wife and I, after the kids had left, we talked long and hard about, do we want to spend this kind of money? And if so, we better use this thing. So we really went into this thing with the full intention of using it as we have. We've got 35,000 miles on it, 3,700 engine hours, which is pretty much unheard of in the boating business. So yes, we use it.
All right, I have no further questions.
Okay. It's 10-1. I'll ask the assessor actually if you're ready to ask questions now versus taking a break, we can go ahead and do that, I think.
I'm ready, but if the board would prefer a break, I'm happy to take a break as well.
Okay. Any comments from the board? It's probably a good idea, I think, to take a break until 1:30.
Okay.
Is that good with everybody? And then we'll come back with questions from the assessor to the applicant.
All right.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, we're back in session, hearing items 20 through 22, applicant GB Kodiak LLC. And we're at the point where we're ready to hear questions from the assessor to the applicant based on their presentation. Before we do that, we did just receive an exhibit from the applicant. Is that correct, Mr. Vlahakis?
That is correct. The
Okay.
exhibit was earlier referenced by the applicant, and they
Okay.
made copies during the break.
And should we call this applicant's exhibit 2?
They're
Or-
requesting to add it at the end of tab 1 in
Okay.
the exhibit.
Okay, so it'll be added to the end of tab 1 of the applicant's existing exhibit. Okay, so Ms. Smith, whenever you're ready.
The assessor also has several documents that we would like to add to our materials as well, if now is a convenient time to do that.
Okay.
There's a packet that I will pass around, and we'll call this Exhibit J. Or perhaps.
And if I could, while Mr. Vlahakis is passing those materials around, I just wanted to get back to council. It was section 405 that says the assessor can assess to the person owning, claiming, possessing, or controlling the property.
Okay, so we have, from the assessor, we have 3 different packets. And would you like all of these to be Exhibit J? Together as one packet?
The single pieces of paper can be J, and then the tax return documentation can be K.
Okay. So the 2 single pages are Exhibit J, pages 1 and 2. And the income tax return from 2012, Exhibit K.
Thank you.
Okay, so whenever you're ready with any questions of the applicant, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, you are the president of the Kodiak LLC, is that correct?
Yes.
Are there any other presidents of the LLC?
No.
And you and your wife are the managing partners, correct?
Correct.
Are there any other managing partners?
No.
And I'm not sure if you have what's...
Well, let me correct. Actually, it's the family trust that owns the LLC.
Okay.
And we're members of the trust. We have 2 children that are also members of the trust.
Okay. And if you can refer to what's been marked as Exhibit J.
Is that the
Is that the one you just handed out?
That's what was just passed out, and it is the 2 single pages.
Yeah, okay, yes, okay.
And the first page is headed the resignation of organizer of GB Kodiak LLC.
Yeah, yes.
And is it true that you and your wife are the founding members of the family trust that you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Your children are not, correct?
Say again?
Your children are not founding members of the trust?
The trust, yes, they are. not of the LLC.
I see. So you and your wife are the only founding members of the LLC.
Well, the family trust, I don't know legally how that works. I'm not a lawyer, but the children are a part of the family trust, and the family trust owns the LLC. So I don't know how that's interpreted.
Okay, well, perhaps I can clarify. The second page of Exhibit J, do you recognize this page of the operating agreement for your yacht?
Yes, I guess so. It's the operating agreement of the LLC.
I see. And this is the controlling document for that organization, correct?
I guess so. Paul, is that correct? Yes.
And you and your wife are the only signatories on that agreement, correct?
Well, in this particular one, I am not too sure. We have some shared usage with the children on the yacht as part of the family trust, so I don't know if they would be signatories to this or not.
Do you consider yourself to be the owner of your yacht?
I'm going to object. We have testimony to the contrary, that the trust is the owner and the LLC is the owner of the yacht. He's already testified to that.
I think that's a fair question.
No, the boat is owned by the LLC, which is owned by the family trust, of which we're signatories to.
Okay, and as you've already testified, you're the sole president of that LLC, and you and your wife are the sole managing partners of the LLC.
Yes.
Okay. Would you consider anyone else to be a greater owner of the yacht than yourself? For instance, your children, would you consider them to have a greater ownership of the yacht than you?
The family trust owns the yacht, and I'm a member of that family trust, so I really don't know how to answer that, ma'am.
And in fact, you're the managing partner of the trust.
Yes, that is correct.
And your children are not, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the trust besides you and your children?
My wife?
Anyone else?
No.
All right. And Mr. Peterson, do you have a California driver's license?
I do.
And do you have a vehicle registered in the state of California?
Yes, I have one car here and 2 cars registered in the state of Washington.
Okay. And if you can turn to what's been marked as Exhibit D in the assessor's materials.
Yes.
This is a claim for homeowner's property tax exemption. Do you recognize your signature on this document?
I do.
Right.
That was done, I guess, when we purchased the house in 2003.
All right. And when you signed this document, you reviewed the meaning of the homeowner's property tax exemption, I assume. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. In 2003, that was our residence.
Okay. And you, at the time, identified your Oxnard address as your principal or primary residence, correct?
In 2003, that's correct.
Okay. And you have never updated that claim with the assessor, correct? Or changed the designation?
I have not. I was not aware of that I had to do that. And no, I have not.
Okay. And you have claimed the benefit of the homeowner's exemption on your taxes every year since 2003, correct?
Apparently I have. Unknowing to me, but I have, I guess.
You've received that benefit, correct?
Yes.
And you have paid your taxes here in Ventura County since 2003, correct?
Yes.
All right, now there's some question about the documentation of the yacht. and I have the exhibit, the new exhibit that you've prepared, and I've also seen this before. It's true that at some point in 2013, your boat was registered to your address in Oxnard, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that. As I explained earlier, that was the year that I asked the document to be mailed to the Oxnard address. As far as I know, that was never changed in Coast Guard documentation, and our copy of the documentation as shown in our material shows that to be the Oregon address.
Are you referring to the exhibit that you just prepared or submitted?
Referring to exhibit, where are we at on this, Paul? I'm referring to the September 27th to October 15th documentation. Is that one you're referencing?
I think all of the registration documents have those dates. I'm referring to the exhibit just submitted by your attorney. It's 2 pages added to Exhibit 1.
Added to?
Yeah, the screenshot.
Please restate your question now that he's got the document in front of him.
I'm just trying to identify if he has the document in front of him.
It's these two documents.
Yeah. Is it these two, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just so
Okay,
we're
and the
looking at the
question
same
is?
thing. The question is, at some point in 2013, the Coast Guard recognized your Oxnard address on your boat's documentation, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that changed, at least based on the dates at the bottom right-hand corner of these printouts, in March 2014.
As I explained earlier, as far as I know, that was when I called them to have the document sent to the Oxnard address. And so that's what this document shows, and then it went back to the normal Coast Guard documentation, as far as I know. I have no other explanation of why this would have happened.
And do you recall when in the year you contacted the Coast Guard to provide them with your Oxnard address?
Well, no, I don't, but it had to be because I was concerned about leaving around the 1st of November, so it had to be in October, I suppose.
All right, and so from the documents you've provided, at least from October 2013 through March 2014, the Coast Guard's website reflected your Oxnard address on the documentation of the boat.
From when to when?
October 2013 through March 2014.
No, I don't see that. The documentation, or what the exhibits that you just gave us, said that there was a Oxnard address shown on February 5th of 14, and then on the 13th of March, the Oregon address was shown. And again, my explanation was that must be the address change when I asked that document to be sent, and they were catching up with that. I have no explanation of why that would be from the Coast Guard records.
But you made that request, as you just testified, in October 2013, right?
Yes, well, approximately then, yeah.
Okay. And you don't have documentation for your boat prior to 2014, September 2014?
I do not. I tried to get that out of Coast Guard records. You may have tried as well, and it's not available.
Okay. Now, Mr. Peterson, have you ever paid any taxes on your yacht?
No, other than the import permit to Mexico.
And it's your claim that the situs of your boat has change to somewhere other than Ventura County. And I'm wondering where, for the lien dates at issue in this case, you claim situs to have been transferred to. So we'll just take them one at a time. For January 1st, 2013, what jurisdiction do you claim has situs?
Where were we in 13? Where's our
Tab 3.
2013, on the lien date, we were in Washington.
And are you just basing your claim for the transfer of situs by the date where your boat was located on the lien date?
No, the boat was there from October of 2012 until January 19th of 13 in Washington, and then we moved on the 20th of January until the 26th of April in Washington, and on the 27th of April, we departed for Alaska. So months prior to lien date and months after lien date, we were in Washington, British Columbia, Oregon, and Alaska.
Okay, and how about for January 1st, 2014?
Is that what the tab 4? 2000, we went to Mexico on the 21st of October of 2013, 2 months before the lien date. We stayed there until April 3rd of 14. We brought the boat back. We did repairs, several repairs during the year. We made 2 or 3 side trips. We did major repair in September and October, and we departed for Mexico 11/15 in 15.
I'm
Or
sorry.
I'm sorry, in 14.
All right, maybe I lost you. Can you repeat that? You're saying in Mexico you were...
We were in Mexico. We departed for Mexico. The site is for 14, if that's your question, is Mexico. We arrived there in October of 13. We departed Mexico mid-April, early April of 14. We come back to the U.S., we come back to Channel Islands Harbor, we did repairs, we made a trip north to San Francisco, we brought it back, we did 2 months worth of repairs in September and a part of October, and we headed to Mexico the middle of November of 14. And we stayed there through July of 15.
So you're claiming that for 2014 your boat had situs in Mexico?
Yes.
And you testified earlier that you are unable to register your boat in Mexico because you're not a Mexican citizen.
That's correct.
And your boat maintained its U.S. Coast Guard registration in 2014, is that correct?
Yes, in Mexico, as long as you have an active import permit.
You can be present there, correct?
Pardon?
The permit allows you to be present, right?
No, it allows the boat to be present there.
It allows your boat to be present.
Correct.
But it doesn't confer any other, it doesn't signify anything other than that, correct?
I guess not.
Okay, and how about for January 2016?
Is that 5? That's tab 5.
17.
I'm sorry, 17.
17?
Thank you.
That's quite recent, so I can pretty much remember that. For the year 17, the boat departed Ventura County in May of 2016. It did not return to Ventura County until November of 2017. During that time, it was in Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, and Alaska. Again, much work, and we've included all the receipts and everything of the work that was done during that period of time.
Is it your claim that in no point in time in 2016 your boat was in Channel Islands Harbor? Or
Yeah.
2007? Well, I believe 2016 would be relevant because it's preceding the January 1st,
Well, yeah,
2017 date.
Either way, the boat was here 2 months.
In 2016?
Yes, as presented to the board during our last appeal hearing.
Okay. And it's also true that in the year 2012, your boat was in the Channel Islands Harbor for 2 months. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Perhaps I can refer you to the
Okay,
documentation.
yeah, if you can show me, I can
So
verify or not.
in your logs for 2012,
Okay.
starting on March 4th,
Which tab are you in?
we can, I think we both provided logs, so we can look at yours. This is
Yeah, I
tab
don't have a log
3.
for 2012.
We started in 2013.
Okay, so in the assessor's exhibits, this would be F.
Tab F. Okay, got it.
And on page 3 of that exhibit,
On page 3, correct?
correct,
That's the February 26th to March 4th?
correct.
Okay,
So on March 4th, you arrive in the Channel Islands Harbor, correct?
that's correct.
And you remained there, if you turn the page, through May 8th. Is that correct?
We remained there through May 8th, correct?
Okay. So about a little over 2 months, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if you can look through just quickly the other 2012 logs, was there any other location on the entire West Coast that you stayed for that prolonged period of time?
Well, we departed, if you consider the West Coast, if you consider California, which I guess is at an issue here, we left the state of California May 11th when we departed from Santa Cruz, and our next stop was Newport, Oregon. And from that time on, the boat did not return to California
Perhaps I missed.
until sometime in 13.
Okay, my question might have not been clear. Was there any other port that you stayed for as long as you did in the Channel Islands Harbor in 2012?
Yes.
And where was that?
Ketchikan, Alaska. And let me see. Ketchikan, Alaska, Anacortes, Washington, and La Conner, Washington.
Oh, and can you direct me to those dates?
Pardon?
Can you direct me to the dates you're referring to?
Oh. Yeah, bottleneck, Lowe's, Rupert. We arrived Ketchikan July 5th, I guess, of 2012. And we departed. We made several side trips out of Ketchikan during that period. So what did I say? We arrived. Rupert, Funky Bay. Yeah, July 5th of 12. I guess through probably through August, the end of August of 12.
But there are quite a few other destinations that you traveled to in that period of time, correct?
Yes.
So you didn't sit in the harbor for 2 months like you did in Channel Islands anywhere else that year, correct?
Yeah, I believe I did.
Can you find that for me?
You know, we weren't, 2012 was not an issue here, so I'm not sure. You know, I'm reading this for the first time. You know, if your question is being directed towards where has the boat sat for as long as it might have sat in Channel Islands Harbor, it sat in Ketchikan, it sat in Anacortes, it sat in LaConner, Washington, significantly longer than 2 months.
Can you show me where those entries are?
Well, Bent Prop, go to August 19th of 2012. You'll see it arrived in Anacortes. Okay. It stayed in Anacortes until August 28th. Then it moved to LaConner August 28 of 2012, and it remained there until April 26th of 2013. So October, November, December, January, February, March, and most of April.
And have you ever paid, and LaConner is in the state of Washington, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever paid taxes in the state of Washington
I
for
have
your
not.
boat? And it's my understanding that the state of Washington does tax boats. And so is there a reason that you haven't paid taxes there? Have you attempted to pay tax there?
You know, the state of Washington does not assess or tax transient boats. And secondly, if a boat is under repair while it's there, it's also exempt from that. So it can be a transient as well as under repair, and it is not taxable.
And this might be a question for your attorney, but if you can provide those legal citations, that might be helpful. That's different from my understanding. But that's not a question for you, so.
Okay.
Okay, and you've never paid tax in Mexico, and so in 2017, you claim the situs to be where?
In 2017?
For the lien date 2017.
Let's see, 17, Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska.
All three?
Yes. Well, if you're speaking periods of time, it was in those locations a significant period of time in 17.
So you're claiming there are 3 different cituses for the tax year 2017?
I'm simply telling you where the boat was.
Okay. Have you identified a jurisdiction where you claim your boat had situs for lien date January 1st, 2017?
Does that mean the most time there?
This is your case, so I'm trying to understand it. You're claiming that situs is somewhere other than Ventura County, and I'm just trying to understand what jurisdiction you claim situs to have been established.
Yeah, in the log, you have all the information. Situs, as far as I understand, situs is the location. It has nothing to do with tax. It's the location of the boat. And so I have done my best to try to identify situs as to where it was.
Okay.
And I think we've done that in quite significant detail.
And your boat returned to the Channel Islands Harbor in November 2017, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And your intention is for it to be harbored there through 2018, correct?
Well, until the current plan is October, end of October, we would probably go to Mexico again. But I don't know. We have a couple family health issues. We have a ailing brother-in-law, and my mother is 93. We've been gone so much that we're needing to pay some attention to those family issues. So the issue is that's the cheapest and safest place to leave the boat for its non-use. We really have no intention of use of the boat. So I filed my my 576B or whatever that form is, by April 1st with the intention of paying taxes in 2018, because that's where the boat will be, because we're not going to use it.
Okay. And is there anywhere that you could store, do you intend to also, well, let me ask this way. Is there any other place that you might moor your boat for such a prolonged period of time, other than the Channel Islands Harbor?
Sure. You know, I could pay, you know, I have a free slip at that address, and it's a safe location. We have caretakers that watch over stuff when we're gone, and so it's the safest and cheapest place for me to leave the boat during its non-use.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant from the board? Ms. Porsche.
I don't think it's explicitly in the record. You live on the boat. Are you also the operators of the boat, you and your wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I have, ma'am, I have a current 100-ton Coast Guard Master Mariner license.
Okay.
Okay, I just have a few quick questions. Either of you are welcome to answer. So we're talking a lot about the location of the boat. Is there a law or something in California that defines a threshold for a number of days where a boat should, well, that would trigger property tax in a certain location?
They don't have specific timelines. I mean, if you look at the assessor's handbook, they talk in terms of whether it's casual or in transit versus here permanently. At the last hearing, actually, when they were ruling on 2016, the boat was here for about 2 months under repair, and you know, one of the comments there was depending on facts and circumstances, you know, you make the determination whether it's a taxable situs. And one of the comments was, it was actually in the 2016 findings, paragraph 27, board finds that the vessel's temporary stay in Ventura County for a short-term vessel repairs lasting a little more than 2 months in the spring of 2016 was not sufficient to establish the domicile of the owner and the taxable situs of the vessel in Ventura for the 2016 lien date. So if you look at it, the assessor's handbook at page 34 gives 4 different criteria for looking at it. So it's not just one thing.
There's one other point, Mr. Chairman. In my research on this issue, which I've done a considerable amount here over the last few years, there's case law in Riverside County. I could find none anywhere else, but in Riverside County, they used a 6-month threshold. And they said if a boat resides or a person resides greater than 6 months or considered a resident, the boat is considering situs. If not, it isn't. That's the only thing I could find in all my research through the state of California was that one instant.
Yeah, and I think if you look back at the Exhibit 2 findings on 2011 when Mrs. Peterson became ill and the boat wound up here while she was hospitalized, I think that exceeded the 6-month period of time, right. And that was part of the reason for the finding.
Okay. And then just one other question. I just want to make sure that I understand your position before we get into a phase of deliberation. So my understanding is that your position is that if an LLC registered in Oregon owns watercraft, that even though the controlling interest in the ownership of the LLC owns a home with the homeowner's exemption in California, exempt from property tax in Ventura County.
Correct.
Is that the, okay. And I think that's all I have for now. I might have another question before we're done. Are there any other questions from the board to the applicant? Okay. Let's then go to closing summaries. We'll start with the applicant and end with the assessor. Even though we
Because
do,
of the burden of proof, we've got the,
Right.
let's see, we've got the assessor with the last word on 2017 and the applicant with the last word on 2013 and 2014.
I think both parties agreed at the beginning to accept
Okay.
the
All right.
order for all three, unless there's any contradiction to that now in terms of how we'll close. I mean, we can do it either way, really. But unless there's an objection, we'll have, let's see, the burden of proof was with the assessor for 2 of the 3. We decided to go procedurally kind of with all 3 that way. So based on that, we would have the applicant provide a closing summary and end with the assessor on all 3. Unless there's an objection, that's the way we'll do it.
No objection.
Thank you.
Okay, so go ahead.
As I explained to a lot of people, being a boater myself, everyone wants to live the dream of being on the boat, going to places. I don't know if any of you are boaters, but the Petersons are very fortunate that they have the ability to both afford the vessel and to do the journey, and it's been a 9-year journey for them. And I think it's very clear from looking at the evidence that, they originally took delivery offshore. It's been the majority of its time either in Mexico or the Northwest. So there's never been any hiding of the boat. The boat has been here for specific reasons and specific purposes. And if you go back and do the math on the logs themselves, in 2013, it was here about 12% of the year. In 2014, about 20%, and in 2017, again, about 13%. And if you look at the logs, for the end of the year, the boat came back. It was in Long Beach for almost 2 months, and then, a few weeks in Oxnard. So if we look at the assessor's handbook, for example, section 576, page 30, taxation of a vessel must be based on the fact that it is to some extent kept and maintained in California rather than here either casually or in transit. It goes on at page 33, taxable situs of a vessel is not determined by the owner's home port, but depends on the existence of sufficient contacts between the situs and the vessel to satisfy due process. Then if you go on to the assessor's handbook on page 34, which was also cited in the last hearing, at page 34, it says, situs of a vessel can be determined in a variety of manners by where the vessel is documented, located, or taxed. You've got it located in different areas. It's documented in Oregon, and I don't think there's any testimony or proof that they changed the ownership or the situs of the owner from Oregon. Where the vessel is habitually moored, the manner of a vessel's use, and the domicile of the owner, depending on the facts and circumstances associated with a given vessel, the appropriate taxable situs of a vessel can be determined as one of these locations. So I think if we look at where the boat's been, where the Petersons have been with the boat, it's fairly clear that there has not been any situs in California for these years other than the boat being here in transit for repairs, or going to a destination. The handbook at page 30 also states that permanent versus temporary situs must be considered when determining taxable situs for property tax purposes Article 13, Section 14 provides that all property taxed by local government shall be assessed in the county, city, or district in which it is situated. And situated connotes more or less permanent location or situs. Thus, the taxation of the vessel must be based on the fact that to some extent it's kept and maintained in California rather than here casually or in transit. Now, in terms of the opening statement regarding, I think there was a reference to that it's taxable if it is, transporting passengers or cargo. Well, that's a term of art, and it means, are you a passenger ship or are you a cargo ship? It doesn't apply to a pleasure vessel, which is what this is. If you look at Coast Guard ratings, a boat is either classified as a pleasure vessel, or if it's in charter or otherwise, it would have coastwise documentation, which refers to chartering. The tax code for unsecured property is not a default tax. In other words, there's no law that I'm aware of that says, well, if you have a house in California and you have the vessel someplace where they don't tax you, we get the tax by default. That's not the case, and that's why we have all of this criteria regarding, how are you using it, where is it being kept, what's the use, and I think it's clear. The Petersons are not one of those boat owners that, we'll have the captain take the boat to Alaska and then we'll fly there and meet it. They are hands-on, live-aboard operators. He's got the 100-ton license as a captain. And, granted, they took a homeowner exemption in 2003, and that was their residence. But they bought this boat 5 years later and have spent the last 9 years cruising up and down the coast. And my final reference, because I think we beat this, excuse me for a moment. Again, just closing with the finding in paragraph 27 from the last hearing, which I think based upon the facts applies here, that a temporary stay in Ventura for a short-term vessel repair lasting little more than 2 months in the spring of 2016 was not sufficient to establish the domicile of the owner and taxable situs of the vessel in Ventura. And I think the evidence shows that the boat was here during transient periods of time, didn't spend a substantial amount of time here, and therefore I don't believe the taxable situs can be Ventura on the vessel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the assessor for closing summary.
Thank you. I would first like to note that the applicant's legal position is supported by very bare legal authority. The applicant's attorney has cited to several sections of the assessor's handbook which are relevant to this board's determination. But there are also sections of the revenue and tax code which are applicable and clear on how this issue should be analyzed and which your board should look at closely. And in particular, the assessor is focused on section 1138, which specifically states that if the owner of a vessel is domiciled in the state of California, the vessel shall be taxed in the state of California. And here, I believe the assessor has presented conclusive evidence that the Petersons are domiciled in Ventura County. The applicant cannot cherry pick his tax benefits. He gets the benefit of the homeowner's exemption every year on his taxes. And to do so was required to sign and swear to the assessor of the county that this is his primary place of residence. And to then manipulate that and say, well, except when it comes to assessing my boat, is disingenuous. And if he wanted to change his principal place of residence, he could have done so by filing paperwork with the assessor and not receiving the benefit of that homeowner's exemption. And in addition, there is a lot of other evidence to prove that the Petersons are domiciled in Ventura County. And I would refer the board to Exhibit H of our materials, which set forth some of the factors that are looked to when determining domicile, and those include the filing of income tax returns in this state, the state of voter registration, the state of vehicle registration, the state of issuance of a driver's license. All four of those factors are met in Mr. Peterson's case, on top of the fact that they own a home here, they claim the homeowner's exemption, they return here quite often. And so I don't think that there is really any evidence to suggest that they are not domiciled in Ventura County. And looking to Revenue and Tax Code Section 1138, given that they are residents of Ventura County, their vessel shall be assessed in the state of California. And as Mr. Peterson testified, his boat has never been assessed. He's never paid any taxes on his boat, despite the fact that he is a resident of Ventura County, and uses the free slip that he has tied to his home to store his boat when he needs it. So it's not that there isn't a benefit that inures to him in his boat ownership by having a home here as well. In addition to the tax code, there is a relevant annotation to the tax code. And that annotation restates what we've been talking about here today, which is that if an owner is domiciled in California, the vessel shall be taxed in California, has tax situs in California, unless the vessel is relocated to a foreign country where it will and becomes habitually moored there. So even if we take country to mean another state, there's no evidence that the boat has been habitually moored somewhere. Mr. Peterson testified that the boat was in all of these various places, but the travel logs show that it's moving about from day to day. So it may be in one state or one area, but it's not sitting in one place. It's not becoming habitually moored in any place. And the evidence shows that it is habitually moored in Ventura County. The location of the boat is not the leading or dispositive fact. The tax code makes clear that the residence, the domicile of the vessel's owner is the dispositive fact. The assessor's handbook reflects that too. And unless the owner can show that the boat has been habitually moored somewhere else and that situs has transferred to that jurisdiction, the domicile of the owner controls. And I've included in the assessor's materials under Exhibit I an opinion of the State Board of California titled Determination of a Vessel's Situs. And on page 3, there's a passage that I think is particularly relevant. And in the first paragraph on that page, the board says, of course, a vessel may, by being indefinitely and exclusively employed within the waters of another state or country, acquire an actual situs there and become subject to taxation at that location, even though the vessel is documented in California or the vessel's owner is domiciled in California. Likewise, if a vessel owner has permanently moved his vessel from its original designated situs to another location where it has become habitually moored, and the owner informs the assessor of this action, the vessel will acquire actual situs at this new location. There is no evidence that this boat has been indefinitely and exclusively employed outside the waters of this state. It sat in the Ventura Harbor for 2 months in 2012, for a month in 2013, and for a month in 2016. And the applicant has referred to, I think, the wrong dates. So if the lien date is January 1st, 2013, the relevant location of the boat isn't where it was after that point. It was the year preceding. And so I think this board needs to look closely at the travel logs of 2012, 2013, and 2016. This same opinion makes clear that a boat can have a majority of its contacts with other states and other countries and travel the seas, but maintain its jurisdiction or situs at the domicile of the owner. And so the fact that this boat travels all over the place and doesn't spend much time in Ventura County doesn't mean that it does not have situs here. The Revenue and Tax Code establishes that their domicile is the deciding factor unless they can show that it's become habitually moored elsewhere. They couldn't say for 2017 what jurisdiction they believe their boat had situs in. They mentioned 3. And that doesn't cut it. To transfer situs, there has to be an identifiable jurisdiction with some substantive evidence to show, yes, the fact that they're domiciled here has been overridden by this other compelling evidence showing that situs has been transferred. So I don't think that evidence is before this board. I don't think the applicant has provided any compelling legal authority to draw the conclusion that it's simply the location of the boat that controls the outcome of this case. And I would ask that this board look closely to the Revenue and Tax Code, which I think decides the issue, and the opinions that we've included help shed light on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the hearing to public testimony. Thank you both to the assessor's representatives and to the applicant for the time and energy put into to this, and we will give it careful consideration. We'll be deliberating in closed session this afternoon, and findings of fact were requested, so those will be prepared. In terms of the completion of our deliberations, we're not sure, and it depends. We may ask our counsel to do some research, so there's a good chance that it won't be decided today, but we will give it very careful consideration.
If you'd like research, we'd be happy to provide additional research.
Thank you, appreciate it. In terms of decision, the applicant's welcome to check in with the clerk in terms of decision or whether a minute order will be going out or what the timing will be. And thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
Regarding the future valuation of this hearing, since the board isn't certain on the date, maybe we should continue the valuation to a subsequent date to be determined between the clerk and the parties, depending on the outcome. Because depending on how the board rules today, a subsequent hearing may or may not be necessary. And since you don't know the timeline of your decision yet, I don't know if we want to tie it down to a date or if we want to just continue the valuation and have me try to figure it out with the parties later. I don't know what works best for everybody.
Okay, so would you, Mr. Vlahakis, would you want us to take formal action asking for there to be a date considered, or should we just ask you to work with the parties?
I guess it depends on what everyone wants to do. The board needs to make a motion to continue the valuation hearing, whether that's to a date specific or not.
All right.
That depends on what everyone else wants to do. And I'm assuming the applications are for valuation and penalty assessment. I'm assuming that the next hearing will cover both issues if the parties want to weigh in on that as well.
Thank you. So we'll start with the applicant. Any comments on?
No, I'm happy to leave it open.
So continue with an open date to be determined? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And assessor?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay. Any comments from the board on that subject? So we'll look for a motion then to continue the valuation and penalty? Is that-
Penalty assessment.
Penalty assessment, if applicable, to a future date not yet defined.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow. Motion carries. Before we go into recess, Mr. Vlahakis, do you want us to go through
Yes.
the balance of the agenda with the stipulations?
Yes, item 49, please.
And then we'll adjourn to deliberation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're on item 49, which includes stipulations, items 50 through 86. And I believe we received all of those ahead of time.
That's correct.
And any comments, questions on the stipulations?
Just one, I noticed on that medical company, does that reflect the rapid appreciation in the value of the personal property in those medical facilities? Because there's major drops in the assessment on it.
Yes, some of it has to apply to that, but it also has to apply, if I remember correctly, there was a double assessment. So we were, it was a recording error with the 571L.
Is this items 50 through 53, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
First?
Yeah, it'd be part of the stipulation there that, I can't remember the,
Okay.
what are
OSF Medical Group.
the the medical group, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Curtis, any comments, questions? Okay, so we'll look for a motion to approve the stipulations.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Crow. Motion carries. And so that brings us to the end. We'll adjourn at 2:27.